Oh yeah, we're going on that night. Evening time, yours truly first. It is autumn officially, first March of autumn, and you know how we do it 24/7 geopolitics, sports and fitness, rock and roll, and marching for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, got that. It's not raining anymore, but got the backpack, the red backpack, and those red gloves, because it's Dragon versus Trump since 2018, and this Quebecer Canadian who was born 3 times in the United States post 70-76, once as a woman, twice as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. We're gonna go roundabout, I guess, to the river and back, because yesterday we went by the mountain, so sometimes we just need to switch up a little bit, you know, get it on the go and drop some garbage and rock and roll. Oh, gas went down a little bit. I guess that's good news for those who drive. And I'm driving these military grade steel toes, and actually it's kind of like aluminum steel, some type of metal, and it's quite interesting how they're done. And it is the second pair that I got bought. They're made in Canada, United States, and that is just something which we have, of course, intermittently, that we are, of course, to get it. And yeah, I got that. Thank you to my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money, but gotta get it on that go, and gotta get it for the drill, and gotta get it for those bakers, butchers, and nurses, doctors, firefighters, electricians, and all those plumbers, all those welders, construction workers. And it just rained a bit. It's not raining now. And it was a bit moody. I cleaned. Gotta be grateful because I did my laundry. And I didn't get no calls for work. I'm always open for business. You know, that's my financial stress. It's the only stress at the moment. But I said, hey, I saw 22 degrees. I wasn't about to go out because I went yesterday, rare Sunday, finishing the summer. So I said, it's the evening, Monday, first evening of that autumn. So it's officially autumn now. It's past 3 p.m. So it's officially first night, I guess, of autumn, because it was a day when it changed. So, you know, gotta be grateful. And I got the raincoat on me, so that raincoat, of course, it's always something that I gotta be appreciating, you know, because my anonymous friend got a gift, and wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never met and had any, but always gotta be grateful, you know. Gratitude is great for mental health. And I say, yeah, let's rock and roll a bit, you know, and then evening, and do a little bit of geopoliticking, do a little bit of a special ASPE, androgynous, pansexual ASPE artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, always developing strategies for the North American Collective first and foremost, and for the NATO complex, and lots of news. I spent, I think, about 6 hours just digesting and analyzing different news from all over the world, from Canada, United States, from Mexico, from India, from China, from Europe, and watched the United Nations Declaration, of course. If you don't know, of course, that I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, and parallel to also being an artist and an athlete. And those are, of course, the main things that I do, you know. 24/7 is something which I have to get on that dimension, of course, of the integrated aspects. And of course, those integrated aspects are always, in terms of my analysis, theorizing of what has been happening since I predicted the current geopolitical conflagration. And of course, that geopolitical conflagration, I have predicted it since 2019 now. And I take great pride in my geopolitical work, although in certain things I lack, you know. I lack certain skills and of a social nature, with living with a form of autism, HFA, high functioning autism, and gotta make sure my anonymous cousin uncle here lets me traverse the street, and got a head nod, and we traverse, you know, always on that prudent side of things, and always good to get a bit of stretching before you get a bit on that fitness journey. I always begin my fitness journey now. I always say today, you know, and I gotta salute my anonymous friend who got a great sticker. The sticker says, live for today, dream for tomorrow, which is kind of the philosophy that I have been, I guess, with hope for tomorrow, that I have been living with since I survived COVID 2020, February 2020. I survived COVID in February 2020, and that's how I live it every day, you know, pretty much on the philosophy like life is short, you know, so it's something which I gotta be endeavored to live by, this code, and this, of course, gotta watch it when you cross the street, of course, turn your heads left or right, always triple check, because you never know, the brakes malfunction, the citizen driver might press the accelerator, the brakes malfunction, the citizen driver presses the accelerator, so I always say, do it 3 times, left and right, left and right, left and right, and you know, at the end of the day, cars can be fancy $1 million cars, but at the end of the day, they're basically on wheels, you know, on wheels. They basically metal on wheels, and sometimes you just gotta double check and cross and just double check prudently, and that's how it is with that. And you cross the street safely, prudently, and then you keep going, you know. So sometimes the cars malfunction, the brakes can malfunction, you know. You never know. They're not 100% the brakes of the cars, you know. So that's why we're gonna check a little bit of food here. I guess it's all empty. Some food, somebody wanna take that? That's for, of course, some food here. I wish I could fill this fridge up, I guess, for my face, but see there's some food there, but that's mostly empty. But I would like one day to just fill it up with goods, but now I'm more taking than putting. And yeah, these days I'm taking. Oh, I forgot to bring the sauce. I was supposed to bring the sauce because I took 2, but see, these are always useful to have for the hands. Air Canada, how's Air Canada going? What is this? Somebody dropped a little bit of that. Or it's just utensils, so I'm gonna put it back. Somebody might need, but I'm gonna take, I don't need that, but these for the cleaning of the hands, and the rest I'm gonna leave because they're utensils too. Just utensils, you know, you can, but these are good for the hands. Wipes, and they contain that liquid, of course, to wash your hands and disinfect your hands, you know. That's something important. And I always say keep the protocols of hygiene, which were established during COVID, you know. I always say keep the protocols, hygienic protocols. I'm making a reference to the hygienic protocols, which were, of course, developed since COVID, and I try to keep them to the best of my ability, you know. Those protocols to disinfect your hands and hand sanitize, I think that those are traits and habits that are good to keep, you know. And of course, my ritual routines are pretty much for years and years and years and years. It's pretty much working out, training, exercising. Dancing is my favorite sport, and coupled with dancing is my favorite sport is, of course, that geopolitics. And gotta take a few steps to see, gotta take a few steps on the go, and then make sure you traverse the street prudently, turn your heads left or right. And my mind is, of course, a bit mathematical, so I was calculating the velocities. You know, what I'm doing is basically velocity, speed and distance, right? Speed and distance. It's a mathematical speed and distance, and calculating the velocity, it's always something which, of course, we have to endeavor to be. And you never know, the brakes malfunction, and of course the electricity malfunction from the car, and that is always something which, of course, you have to check. As you can see there, that car's there, and there's a road there, so my view is not clear. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna traverse on the other side here, see, because sometimes the view is best if you take a few steps, you know, for my security, for the other citizens' security. It's best if, of course, I traverse here, right? Because in the middle, the velocity is, now I have a better equidistance. I'm not gonna get too technical and mathematical, but the vision and the equidistance was way better on that side there. So that way, you cross the street better, right? So that is a functionality. Now, I'm not going to go into the technical aspects, but pretty much it's velocity, you know. Velocity is scientific, right? It's science. So the velocity of the speed and the distance. And then those things just kind of pop in my brain, you know. It's something because of my Aspie brain. And again, autism, it's a form of autism. I know there's autistic people who require more support than myself, and I fall under the category of HFA, high functioning autism. So it's not the same. So my autism is not the same, you know. my autism is not the same as some other people's autism, but of course it is the general matter, of course, of the appellation where we are, of course, to be endeavored, of course, and all those things are. So that is what we have to do here. For example, the velocity would be from a car to come from that way and that way. From that way or that way. So here you have that side. So that's the distance. Right, is the distance. That's the distance. So that is velocity, you know. That is the velocity. Of course, that is the velocity. Velocity includes distance and speed, you know. The velocity includes speed and distance. And of course, that velocity includes the speed and distance. For example, here would be a square. So my velocity is, of course, the speed that I'm marching with and the distance. The distance is just 4 yards, right? It's 4 yards between that square and that square. So being that it's 4 yards and my velocity, that means that I march a speed, of course, let's say 40, I can go in meters or yards per well, not yards per second, I guess I get, just maybe I could do 4 yards in a second, right? So maybe that would be the distance, right? But of course it can increase or decrease, right? So that can increase and decrease as I move now. So on this march I'm moving, my pretty much marching pace is pretty much, I could say maybe it's 4 yards per second, average. But sometimes it could be 11. Well, maybe not 11. I'm not running. I will have to run. But sometimes if I traverse, yeah, at one point in time, during this march, it's going to be 11 because I might run to cross the street. Right? So if I run to cross the street from that side, this is one way. They're coming there. The car is coming there. So my velocity would be a certain speed, right? That would be the speed and the distance. From here, of course, to get to the other side would be 10 yards, right? That's 15 yards maybe, right? That's 10 yards, right? So that 10, 15 yards, of course, that is, of course, the category of me traversing, just like in a football field, you know, because I love gridiron, although 49 has got that 3 in a row. But of course, there's the dancing that I love most. Dancing is my favorite sport, but, you know, I get that priestess always for the empire, God bless, and Goddess kiss. And just to show you how my brain works, and many autistic people's brain works differently, people with Asperger's. And of course, Asperger's has been merged with autism. It's HFA. Also known as Asperger's. I use both, HFA, high functioning autism, and Asperger's, and it's something that I refused for many years to accept until about 3.5 years ago that I have this neurodivergence, and now I am different and part of this tiny minority of people who have, you know, Asperger's and HFA, and have to incorporate all my traits and make sure that we build these bridges which have to be constructed and built and with you, the 99%ers of the neurotypicals, because the vast majority of the population are neurotypicals and we are neurodivergent. So we always have to build bridges, right? Sometimes the bridges are more difficult to build at the times with different people, but nonetheless. So from here to this distance to that distance, let's say it's about, I would say not more than 20 yards, right? Now it's maybe 13.5 yards, maybe 13.4, maybe exactly, or like a 15 yards. Let's say it's 15 yards. Now I mean that if I run, I increase in per second, maybe I can go a few yards. I can do it in a few seconds. So that means that my speed, if I march or I run or I jog, my speed increasing. So the velocity is the speed and the distance. Right, that's how it's calculated. Of course, it goes well in astrophysics. Astrophysics, right? We're launching rockets, how fast it goes, or satellites, orbits, for example. But that's way more advanced, right? This is more advanced on a higher plane, you know. That's more advanced on a higher plane. And of course, the higher plane, you go up 100 kilometers, 500 kilometers up, then have the gravitational pull of the Earth to take into account. So I'm not going to go into those dynamics because I don't pretend that I'm an expert in that. I'm always learning in that parallel life, eh? Yes, because it is the year of darkness. November 21st, 2029. We're in that parallel life, I'm an Aspie, but there my special interest is not rock and roll, sports and fitness and geopolitics as it is here, but it is science, technology, mathematics, physics. And that's what I do 24/7 in that parallel life. And I started building in 2025 in consortium with NATO member countries as a mass public private partnership and other scientists. a consortium and a super satellites. We started launching them in 2025, and now is the year of darkness, 21st of November 2029. 21st of November 2029, and of course I launched those satellites now in that parallel life, but we together with a consortium of groups of scientists for NATO, mass scientists, and of course to launch satellites for total security, total service, total defense, for total security, total service, total defense, for total SD, for total security, total service, total defense, and that's what it is, you know. So that's basically the velocity. To sum it up, the velocity is basically, of course, the taking into account the distance and the speed. The distance and the speed, like let's say here will be maybe a few yards, and from there to there, you know. So speed could be, you know, a few yards per second, a few meters, if you will, you know. Or it could be different, of course, meters. For example, this car, if you would have turned here, I would have had to calculate from that point where I'm safety to that point. Think about it like a football field, you know, to get to the football field, of course, how much it requires, of course, to be and to get the dynamics where we are, the propositions where we are now, of course, to be interjected where we are, categorized, of course, where we are now to be. So all that, of course, is to say that it is sometimes a good thing, right? Because you can calculate how to cross safer pedestrian crossings. Encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Welcome to this special Imperial edition. Always for the Empire, always God bless. Goddess kiss, always God bless. Goddess kiss, always God bless and Goddess kiss. 24/7 for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, and all those doing some of that painting. Look at that painting here, see? This requires a lot of painting, here, which I hope we can do soon, you know. Hope we could do a little bit of that painting now, closer than ever, because it's something which I would love to see. Wouldn't you love to see this painted up? Look at that, it's so like gray. Some good paint, all of this, you know. Just paint it some blue, some orange, yellow. Yellow would be nice. Actually, yellow would be rock and roll, eh? All of that, both sides. 4 sides, actually. 4 colors would be best. 4 colors would be best, you know. 4 colors will be, of course, the best. So, of course, that is all the left and the right, of course, where we are now. And that is the circumstantial positions where we are, of course, to get it on that rock and roll. So, yellow, blue, green, and red. Yellow, blue, green, and red. Yellow, blue, green, and red. Yellow, blue, green, and red would be, of course, fantastic. In my opinion, of course. In my opinion. So that opinion, of course, being, of course, based that it is a situational comprehensions where we are on that rock and roll, is something that I would love to actually volunteer to do, you know. Volunteer. I would volunteer to paint it. Let's check it out here. Oh, this one, see, this one goes for that one, and this one goes perpendicular. So it's always adjacent, right? So you press this one to get to the other side, and you press to do to the other side. So that is just how it works. That is just how it works. So let's take a look how it would look here, of course, yellow. How it would look yellow. Yellow, green, red, and blue. Yellow, green, and blue. Here, right here, of course. Wow, I think so. Hey, what do you say? I'm willing to volunteer, but of course we need the paperwork, sometimes the bureaucracy. Sometimes I guess we got too much. Too much. It has to be a balance, but you know, that would be quite an embellishment of the city. Just blue, yellow. We have a lot of gray space. We have to invest, mass invest, of course, in our public spheres. Mass invest, of course, in our public spheres. Mass invest, of course, in the public rehabilitation. The public rehabilitation, you know, mass invest, public rehabilitation of the cities. I think that's something which we should mass do as much as we can. I'm just trying to picture it in those 4 colors: yellow, blue, white, not white, but not white. Yellow, blue, green, and of course, so yellow, 4 colors. What's that? Is that the number 44? Yeah, that's a 4-4, eh? 44 in red. This has to be recycled also. Don't leave Tim Hortons cups here, people. Just Don't leave it. Just put it in the trash, man. Put it in the recycling. That's, you know, I give benefit of the doubt that it fell from people's hands or whatever. You were driving and you didn't want to do an accident, so you threw it because you made a mistake. But just put it in the garbage. That's why you have like, that's why of course we have to recycle and all that we have to do together comprehensively, and of course the situation where we are. So this number 44, I guess, is going to be put properly in the garbage or recycling, because now it's too wet to recycle it, so it's no longer recyclable, but it will go of course in the garbage. I think there's some election coming on, so yeah, I'm gonna offer a little march, which way to go. We can go by left or right, east or west. Sometimes we take more of the route via that side. I guess we can, and we can take a different routes. Let's go. Okay, I know we're gonna go in the lights, because now the terrain's a bit wet down there. So since it got wet, we're gonna just stay in the light as much as we can, and I guess we're gonna go to maybe my bank and come back. That's about where we're gonna go, maybe to my bank and come back on the side and do a little bit of that drill, or come back by the other side, something like that. I guess we're gonna freestyle mode it. I don't want to do a long one today, you know, but just because I did one yesterday, which is an unscheduled Sunday one, but you know, I have to get my workout, have to get my march. And yesterday we went of course to the mountain, you know. Yesterday of course we went to the mountain. So that of course is, well, we go most to Mount Royal, my second home there in Hawk Island, Montreal, and I wonder how much is the average price here. This is a new joint, hotel, which was open, hotel. Call it a hotel. It's kind of looks more motel-like, but I guess you can motel hotel it. Railway park, you got the railway in the back, and needs a little bit more color, but something more bright. But I wonder how much it is to rent. Maybe I should drop a CV. I'm not looking for hiring. I didn't see anything for hire, but I wonder if they're hiring. I'm always looking for employment opportunities, because my only stress now is of course financial. But look, see, this is where we pass some time. This is all public works. So I always wonder, of course, all the public works that's being done here. See, that's the gates. So they're doing, of course, underneath. And of course, every time I pass by here, I do an in-depth meditation, because of course it's something that we have to recognize, that of course we have this privilege of civilization, just to have running water, tap water, to have water to do the dishes, to drink, potable water, tap water, to take bath, to bathe, to take of course the bath, and of course to take a little bit of a shower, you know, take a bit of shower. So of course these bricks are of course in relation to the public works that's ongoing, and that pipe is also related to this. And I saw that on the pipes, it's actually made in the USA. So that's why we gotta work together. See, I'm gonna show you where it says made in the USA, and I gotta salute, sing some rock and roll for the public workers, sing some rock and roll for the public workers. And that is of course just the public works which I have to salute, because we all have this privilege of civilization, which we don't usually acknowledge, or we're not totally mindful of it. But you know, civilization is a privilege, and that was my thesis back in 2023. Civilization really is to have running water, electricity. Go Hydro-Quebec, go all the dams which were built in the 20th century, just maintaining them. Sometimes it's so much labor to maintain it, and that's why we need mass investment in our infrastructure, you know. And of course, I am a philosopher, an artist, athlete, independent, and geopolitical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. And gonna check some of those. See, this is an ASPE kind of thing. You know, we check those weird, awkward details that are written there, such as the small prints and the small numbers, and we try to figure out what our classifications means, and if there's something to do with the industry. Hey, spider, God is blessed. Love those spiders, God is blessed. And see, it says potable water pipe. See there, potable water pipe. And most of them were built different years. This one is July 2017, and they say made in the USA. I see here made in the, see, made in the USA. So that's why we got to work together, eh, NAPCO, pipe and fitness. So thank you to the producers who made it, and I gotta thank you to the workers, who get a little bit of rock and roll. And sometimes words is not enough. We gotta sing that rock and roll for the public workers, but it's made in the USA, and we got to work together, of course, for that conglomerate. And that is just something which we have to do, of course, now in all the appellation where we are, of course, industrious. And we have, of course, to be and, of course, to regulate all the communicative aspects where we are now and involve ourselves in all the domains, of course, for the public workers is something that we have, of course, to be now. See? Look at that. That is, of course, something which I gotta be endeavor to be and to do and to acknowledge. So many pipes, underneath the public workers. Imagine if we wouldn't have this aqueducts. Of course, we wouldn't have these aqueducts. That would be something which we wouldn't have, of course, potable water, and we wouldn't have water to drink. We wouldn't have water to drink. I wouldn't have water to drink. All of us. Black, white, and rainbow, Black, white, and rainbow in the North American Collective across the 63. So public workers who are, some are white, some are black, some are white, some are rainbow. That is the workers. That's why we get that NACWP, the North American Collective Workers Party, the North American Collective Workers Party, as we go to endeavor to get it on the go and on the left. And that's how we got, to get it for the workers where we are now, endeavored to be and to meditate, because there's tons and tons and hundreds of miles, thousands of miles and kilometers. This is just Montreal. This is just one segment. And of course, keeping in mind that Montreal has a population of 2.5 million people, and that this segment probably affects some thousands of people. Just this part here affects thousands of people, right? Because we are in NDG, and of course it affects so many people with that, and those is, of course, the affectation of so many thousands of people where we are now, So that is just why we are, of course, in the consequential appellation, of course, of where we are endeavored to do this meditation, which sometimes will lack certain details because, I'm not involved personally, but I can do a meditation nonetheless and relate this to my specialty, my domain, my kingdom, my area, which is geopolitics, and that's where pretty much I excel. I am good at, I am great at, I would say even excellent. While paradoxically at some other things I can be quite inept, have some difficulties, things around the house sometimes, the clumsiness and the weird, some weird things around the house that is just more problematic, or they certainly can be more problematic in certain instances. And of course that is just how Aspies we are sometimes. So autism is, again, I don't know, there was something on the news about autism in relation, of course, with the title. When you hear the ambulance or the silence, my brothers and sisters, what do? You slow down and you do the 180. You do the 180 to the left, 180 to the right. You do the citizen integrated security. You turn to the 180 to the left, 180 to the right. You do the integrated security. You turn 180 to the left and 180 to the right. When you hear the sirens, firefighters, our brothers and sisters who are not perfect in the police, I sing that rock and roll for them, and I also sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue who do their criminal rehabilitation. Because we need to get the 63, always for the 63, the Imperial North American Rehabilitation Act, and my brothers and sisters who lost their liberty. We're going to be putting some mass works projects together. Mass works. We're going to be putting some mass works. We're going to be putting some mass works together, We're going to be putting some mass work together. We're going to be putting them to some good work here, because civilization is a privilege, and we're going to do the Imperial Republic and the 63 joint Canada-United States Criminal Rehabilitation Act to, of course, have and rebuild all the aqueducts, the sewers, the canals, to do this mass work for the rehabilitation of the civilizational collective in the public-private partnership. And, of course, got to salute the truckers. So when you hear, that's this protocol, of course, the 180. I call it, actually it's double 180, so it's the 360. It's called the full circle citizen security is the full circle citizen integrated security protocol, is the full citizen security protocol. So you turn to the left, you stop when you hear the firefighters, the sirens, the sound of the sirens of the police, of the ambulances, of the firefighters. You do 180 to the left, 180 to the right, usually 3 times. You do it 3 times. 180 to the left, 180 to the right. See, this is from Westlake, made in the USA, USA. So pretty cool. We gotta work together on that, and that is just what we have to do together in the aspects where we are now. So that is quite something which is a thank you. Gotta send some thank you, some LOV. I know they're financed, paid by the hour and what have you, but still, it is something which is it requires a mass investment across the North American Collective, a mass investment in all of our spheres, all our spheres of the public and private. We have, of course, for the past 44 years, Canada, United States, we have mass concentrated on the private. Now my ideas, theories, protocols, it's a rebalancing, reharmonization as a public-private partnership that all my ideas, theories are fundamentally for years and years that I've been putting online. Basically, fundamentally a call for a mass public-private partnership across the North American Collective. So that's fundamentally what it is, and you can see here the brothers and sisters who do the work. You don't know the ratio of the gender, myself being double trouble androgynous, 50-50 because of my past lives, reincarnation. Sometimes I was born a man, a woman, man, a man, a woman, man, man, a woman, man, man, a woman, man, woman, a man, man, a woman. So you get that 50-50 now, So you get that 50-50 now. So basically, of course, just to say, of course, that it requires a mass investment. So all this work which has been and is done, of course, protrudes for us to have drinking water. So just to drink water, of course, it's something which we have. Just this water here, This water, to drink water. Drink water here. Just that water, Just that water. Just that water. To drink it, all the water there. Just that water. That's the water that goes, of course, there and in the hotels, motels. Hopefully somebody making love, and that's what it is with that, and that's what it is, And that's what we gotta do, to get it on the go. So that is just something which we have, of course, on the concomitant aspect, of course, of the civilization of prudence that we have, even the sewers, right? To have the sanitation. Sanitation at home, sewers for sanitation, right? Imagine just the sanitation. We take for granted all these things, and you see how fragile they are when you have crises such as COVID or other crises, financial, economic, geopolitical. That's so much work that we haven't seen in the 20th century. For us to have all this, it's really a big privilege. Civilization is a big privilege. I have it, you have it, we all have it. Even the richest, wealthiest who have made their money because of our civilization, whether you're a multi-millionaire athlete making that 44 million per year, playing football, playing basketball. Basketball is the highest average, Basketball is the highest average. But you have soccer players, actually. But soccer in North America, we don't have that much. But of course, you have, the NFL, NHL, and MLB, to be just... The owners are, of course, the ones who are mostly the wealthy, who makes the most profits, but it's both the owners and the athletes that are called now to the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, to reduce the ticket costs, reduce the ticket costs. That's the reduction of the ticket costs to be, and that is what we have, of course, to be endeavored, to be endeavored. So, of course, that is something which we have, of course, to be. And that is just the reality of our life, The reality of our life now that we all have the privilege of civilization, Somebody drinking water now. Somebody drinking water. So that is just the idea, the theorizing, and then you have the reality of the work that has been done and that is yet to be done, right? The work that has been done and that is yet to be done. So of course we have to endeavor ourselves But this meditation, of course, is also can be part geopolitical and statistic, and of course as labor related, right? Because in fact is that we have to reinvest massively in our public infrastructure, both Canada and the United States. That's why, of course, have been calling for years now for the mass public-private partnership, the mass public-private partnership for the rehabilitation of the North American Civilizational Collective, of the North American Civilizational Collective, of course, to be endeavored to be, you know. So that is just the real domain. The real domain exists now. I don't want to be too academic, philosophical. So the real domain is what today, September 22nd, 2025, exists as underground that enable our sanitation, that enable us to utilize the faucets, to clean dishes, to cook with the water, to drink water, to take showers, to bathe, etc., 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 etc. And of course the sanitation that we have when we go to the toilet and we flush. Right. So that is just the real domain that exists now of the underground aqueducts and tunnel systems and infrastructure of the North American Collective. So again, for the North American Collective, Canada, United States, pretty much we have very similar standards and applicable to the work that has been done mostly in the 20th century that reverberates now. And we see that we have here in Montreal that some pipes are bursting more and more in the past 3.5 years because we haven't invested in a while. So even our infrastructure, our roads. So we need the mass Imperial, both for the 63 of the, my call for the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, to put some work in the, of course, to create the Draconis, aka the public-private partnership, Draconis, integrate with all security services and industries for the North American Collective. And I gotta give a shout out for the truckers. That red and white go well together. Red and white. And that trucker maybe begins his journey now going across Canada, going to the USA, and maybe he's carrying some bacon, some cheese, some lettuce, some hamburgers, some buns, some of my wafers. Maybe he's carrying some goods that are being delivered, and there's so many trucks now across from Canada, United States, and even across North American Collective, which includes Mexico and the islands, Haiti, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and Barbados. They're all part of the North American Collective. And I'm just gonna make a little pit stop there because it's getting hot and it's now raining. I'm just gonna put my raincoat, or should I keep it on unless it starts? I'm sweating, so I'm getting hot with it. I guess it's not raining and we don't need to. I'm gonna take it off, and we're gonna continue our journey. We're gonna continue our journey. I just want to make sure people see we have the recycling there and the garbage. So just please, just that's for garbage, that's for recycling, that's for garbage, that's for recycling. Garbage, recycling. Because often I see that they're intermingled, and that's a no-no. Basically, that's a no-no. That's something which we should avoid. We should really avoid, because it creates problems. Let's say hello to the spiders. Say hello to the spider. What you doing, beautiful? Leave the spiders alone. They're holy to the goddess. And I love this structure here. It was built during COVID, and see structures like this. They're all part of the public, this public sphere, and this kind of. Every time I pass, I try to calculate. Oh, I forgot to put the number 44. I'm gonna go there. Every time I pass here, I always meditate, try to figure out it's an equilateral triangle. Equilateral, that means that the two sides are co-equivalent. They're equal in size, right? The size. So whenever I pass here, I try to calculate, but it's only like meters, yards. It's only estimation, of course. It cannot be properly calculated, but without actual tools, but it could be an estimation. And what I do know is that it is an equilateral, but then the angles, it's kind of, yeah, because they are 90 degrees. They have to be, right? Well, they're not actually. Well, if the three are equal, So one's 90, the other ones are 45. Usually, because if the three are equal, there's 60, 60, 60, right? Because it's always 180 inside. Inside a triangle, it's always 180. The degree. Mathematics and geometry is always fascinating. You know, although I wasn't a master, and you know, because of Asperger's, I'm assuming that's why I dropped out of college, because I don't remember. I have trouble remembering my life prior to, like, February 2014, which is a long time ago. February 2014, being that we're September, that means February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That means 11 years and 7 months ago. 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 11 years and 7, so my life prior to, I have trouble remembering my life prior to February 2014. It's like retrograde amnesia, memory loss. But I have a very good memory of the past years. Is just 7, 8, 9, 10, then after 11. Sometimes I guess memory comes back. Maybe I was, I don't know, maybe I was a junkie. I was trying to kill my autism, HFA, and my Asperger's. Because Asperger's is basically a milder form, a variant of autism, right? Asperger's, it's HFA, high functioning autism. So I'm on the spectrum basically, but certain things of a social nature are more difficult nonetheless, and I guess, not I guess, but it's something which has made me suffer like many Aspies do. And the number seems of autism and Asperger's seems to have been increasing in the past decades. It has been increasing, the diagnosis, although officially only about half of Aspies are diagnosed, which is about 0.44% of the population. And if all Aspies would be diagnosed, that would be that it's about 0.88, but that's still less than 1%, right? So anyways, back to what I was saying. I don't know if I was an alcoholic for a few years. I used to live still on the island of Montreal in Côte de Neige. I had a very small underground room, very small, very moldy, with lots of mold, and I didn't even have a bathtub. It was like a small prison cell. It was really like a small prison cell, and I really didn't even have a proper kitchen. It was in my room. So the kitchen and the room were in one room, small room. I guess I served my time. I would say I served my time. Maybe a few years there, maybe I was doing drugs and alcohol, because sometimes that's why you have problem or trauma remembering your life prior to that. And as I see here, you know, how my brain now works, I'm trying to calculate and see, because this is just a segment of all the highways of the coming of our empire of the 63, and gotta salute the truckers, and the truckers on the road carrying the bacon, the cheese, the romaine lettuce, and all the goods that are being carried now, you know, are super important to our security collective, especially in terms of food security. And we're open for vulnerabilities. We're very vulnerable at this moment because our continuing support, what I call the DMAA, as you can kind of discuss it, and it's one of my philosophical theories, which is a frame of reference and a working tool which has to be incorporated throughout all NATO member countries. It stands for Direct Military Assistance on Action, which if NATO takes DMAA, Direct Military Assistance or Action, there are certain consequences which adjacently can coalesce, such as, for example, the solidification of Russia and China, the China-Russia solidification, and of course China mass investing in development nuclear weapons in the past 5 years during COVID, as they had never done prior before. They almost doubled. You wonder why they almost doubled their nuclear warheads in such a short span of time. And of course, this is what I do 24/7, geopolitics, geopolitical analysis. Of course, that is what it is with that, and that is what I have to. It's not that I have to do, it's just that it comes. Think about it as software updates, as somebody who's like a cyborg, a robot. I'm not. I'm human. I'm a human being. I'm just autistic. I'm on the spectrum, and you know, I have my weird, awkward sexuality. I'm not frustrated in that manner, but I'm not frustrated in that manner. If I would be, I would discuss it. I'm a bit sexually frustrated, but I have a healthy masturbation. Yeah, I have a healthy masturbation, and I'm not looking specifically. If I'm gonna marry somebody, I gave myself a new deadline by October 31st to propose again. October 31st to propose again. So that proposition is going to be the third one. If not, I'm going to have to Joe Biden it. Supposedly Joe Biden proposed several times, 6 times. He got a no, then the 7th he got a yes to Jill. So maybe I'm going to have to do it like that. But if you're black, you're white, you're black, you're a man, you're a woman, you know. If you're a man, you're a woman, we can double trouble with that. And that's just what it is. If you're a man, you're a woman. That is what it is with that. If you're a man, you're a woman. Then, of course, you want a LOV with Rainbow Dragon, Adrian Hannah Dragon, Priestess Citoyen, Rainbow Dragon. Of course, that is just what we have to do. And that is, of course, the appellation of the integrity of the interplay. That's what it is. If you want LOV, you gotta be 18 plus though. So I'm gonna card you just like gonna card you just like when you go buy whatever you go buy, that you have to show cards for that you're 18 plus, like cigarettes, alcohol. I don't smoke, I don't drink much, very rarely if I can afford a wine. And I don't know if maybe I was an alcoholic prior to February 2014. That's why I lost memory, because sometimes alcoholic. And I remember I survived a vicious surprise attack. I gave myself a new deadline, October 31st, to retrieve the documents. To retrieve the documents, you know. To retrieve the documents, October 31st, and I missed the deadline September 11th, and I guess I kept missing so many deadlines in my life that I'm happy to be here today after having struggled with depression and suicidal. And I survived a vicious surprise attack years and years ago on the island of Montreal, and I was hit in the head a few times, hit my head on the floor, and had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, you know, right arm, right shoulder. So, and I was bloodied up, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital, you know. I went to the Jewish General Hospital, and of course, my right arm, left shoulder was cracked back, cracked back. And of course, I was put on some meds, some medication, and of course, that was some medication which I put, you know. So, I don't know if it was for what, but probably for pain, and just don't know exactly when that was. I'm curious. I hope they have the archives. I would love to retrieve it to see what date it was. And I remember moving from there. It was a moldy place, you know, very moldy. Lots of mold, you know. It was lots of mold, and that was just what it was. Lots of MOLD. And like I said, maybe I was a junkie. Maybe I was a junkie doing hard drugs and combined with alcohol and that trauma. Maybe that's why I have trouble remembering my life prior to winter 2014, like January-ish, February-ish, you know, before that, like February 2014, before that, January, like winter, January, February 2014, I can situate it like that. Just before that, I just don't remember high school and my youth. I have on the journals what I written. I don't have a birth certificate. I graduated high school here 22 years ago, and not far from here, well, some 44 kilometers southeast from here, in Canada, in Quebec, Canada, of course, because it could have been in the USA, right in Vermont, but no, not in Canada. So I have a high school diploma, and I went to college, but I dropped out of college. That's a big problem for Aspies, and I'm going to discuss Asperger's now a bit, but maybe my memory will come back. I just remember I lived in that moldy place, you know, very moldy. Small type of prison cell. I say always that I was saved to save somebody else, because I think in the past 11 plus years I saved some people and I did some good deeds, I guess, to balance, and maybe I served my time there in that moldy place, underground place, and that's maybe what I was, you know, in that moldy place. And always got to think about that, and always got to be co-equivalent, of course, to the life where we live now, you know. So I live basically for today. I guess I changed so many times, and in the process of changing my name, Adrian Hannah Dragon, keep it out of your mouth if it's not for blessing. Hope you'll have an understanding. Otherwise, it'll be pestilence. So that's that rock and roll with that, and paid my rent, paid my electricity bill. One more bill to pay. I have 30th of September to pay it, so I have until next week, right? Because it's the 22nd, so it's gonna be not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, the deadline to pay it, and I hope I could pay at least $25 on it. Gonna check that budget up because I'm financially stressed. But yeah, so I lived in that moldy place on Clan Ronald in Côte des Neiges, and I didn't even have a bathtub. The bathroom was so small. I'm grateful that I have a bathtub now. I can bathe because I've been craving a massage therapy session. But you know, friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance. That's that rock and roll. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. If you're black and white or rainbow, you gotta be 18 plus, just like when you go buy cigarettes or booze, or when you go to a club, you know, if you wanna do that. Especially massages, like I said, I'm not sexually frustrated. My little clit scar, which I scratch sometimes less because I put some cream. I need a better cream, and I need to go to the dermatologist to check out that mystery. And it's a big, it gets bigger, you know, with my erections on it, but it itches sometimes. And like maybe eczema or psoriasis, eczema, those are lifelong skin conditions. I went about 9 years ago, more than 9 years ago, I went to see if it was a sexually transmitted disease, and it's not a STD. So it's not an STD, but of course, just like Asperger's, what causes it is inconclusive, you know? What causes it is inconclusive. The cause of Asperger's and autism generally is inconclusive. So it's inconclusive what causes Asperger's and what causes autism generally. Just like memory loss, sometimes it's alcoholic. If you drink too much, you know, a few years, maybe I was drinking for 4, 5, 6, 7 years and doing drugs for 5, 6, 7 more years, or that trauma, whatever it is. Live with my scars and happy, joyous, financially stressed, but in in good moods, you know, crossing this bridge. And when I cross bridges, I always reiterate and repeat on my videos, long marching, dancing, philosophical videos, that as an ASPI, as people with autism, and ASPIs, people like myself with HFA who are neurodivergent or part of the LGBTQ community, because I guess 2 minorities in one, and yours truly. And we gotta build bridges, whether the bridges are small, medium, large, or extra large. Those 4 bridges: small, medium, large, or extra large, you know, small, medium, large, or extra large. Whether we build those bridges. And that's where we were yesterday. You see that red light, not the one that flashes, but the other one there. So that's where we were, right there at the top of the mountain. Mount Royal is kilometers away from here, and it can be seen afar off. Here we're many miles and kilometers, maybe 16, 17 to the southwest. We're southwest of my second home, Mount Royal, the headquarters for the coming of our empire, the 63. Let it rise and let it be. Pledge your allegiance to our family. Let our empire rise and let it be. Pledge your allegiance to our family. Let our empire rise and be. Pledge your allegiance. And that's where it is there. And of course Montreal is there. So when I cross bridges, you know, I always say we have to build bridges. Sometimes the bridges are small. It's like when you order a cup of coffee, you know, or you might order a cup of coffee, you might order a cup of coffee, you might order some fries. It's small. You might order a cup of coffee that's small, fries that's small or medium, or large or extra large within those 4 categories. That's Montreal, Hawkeye, and downtown core there, which you can see with the lights. It's a bit blurry now because it's a bit foggy, but that's where it is. So we got to build those bridges, and it's a mutual bridge building, eh? So we have to build them, eh? Because I'm an individual sovereign Aspie. That's black and white also is nice to go with a little rainbow on it, would be super cool. Or some red, but that's really nice as well. So we have to build bridges because myself as an individual with Aspie, individual sovereign citizen Aspie, I don't have antagonistic feelings, you know. I don't have resentful feelings. I don't have these negative feelings towards you, the majority of the neurotypicals. We have to build bridges because paradoxically, Aspies can bring a lot to the table, parallel to my trillions of kisses on that new table, which kind of looks like a circus. Kind of looks like a circus table, you know. We got that rock and roll, and parallel to that, we got here the true north, strong and free, which we gotta add that mix with the land of the free and the home of the brave to give us some LOV and some new justice for the 63. As we're gonna fuse and we're gonna rock and roll on that. So that is, of course, just the momentum where we are now, you know. So we have to build bridges, sometimes small, medium, large, extra large. Within those 4 categories, of course, there could be some added nuances to that, but generally those 4 categories of bridges got to be built between us neurodivergents and you neurotypicals. And no, not all Aspies are good at computers, computer science. Yes, mathematically the statistics are disproportionate for people with Asperger's. It's about more than 20%. So that's 1 out of 5. I'm not one of those. 1 out of 5 Aspies who's good at computers. I can always get better, especially if my brother citizen Bill Gates comes and we have some cup of coffee together. 44 cups of coffee. And gets, not on the same day, of course, 2 or 3 a day, and then we could split it up for a few weeks discussing my initiatives, ideas, and live streaming the event with all the leaders of the free world from Montreal, Hawk Island, blah, 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 blah. And of course, that is that rock and roll with that, and that is just how we're gonna go drilling it. And you know, that's just the informations where have to be put the knowledge and the wisdom and the understanding into more practical, tangible solutions for the problems that Aspies encounter. Again, not all Aspies are good at computers. Yes, it is about 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 times higher than the neurotypical population, which I guess is between 2 and 4%, or around 2% of neurotypicals, which you are the vast majority of the total population of the North American collective of both Canada and United States. 99% of the population, you are neurotypicals compared to us neurodivergents. But then you have a perspective, or in the majority of the population of neurotypicals, about between 1, it depends, it's a variation across regions, but around 2%, let's say, are good at computers. You know, in some regions it's 4 or 5%, other regions is 1%. So that is a higher rate. So the ratio is bigger. But the problem is that for Aspies we have problems such as, of course, employment, right? Because again, and it's not a disease, right? It's not a disease, and that's where we have to draw the line, that it's not evil, not bad, not negative. It's just sometimes it's hard to manage or deal or fully understand the dynamics of living with Asperger's and living in the neurotypical world, which is mostly constructed from a neurotypical perspective over the past decades and decades and decades and decades, and where we live as Aspies who sometimes, a lot of times, especially when it comes to employment, there's a lot of suffering there, because I had many jobs. It's just there's a tendency to lose them, you know. Tendency to lose the jobs. You know, there's a tendency to lose the jobs, you know. Not to be able to keep them long term. And that was my problem over the past years. If I check, I had many jobs, especially even during COVID. I had like 5, 6, you know. So it's just sometimes 4 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, a few days. It's just keeping the jobs is problematic, you know. Long-term employment is a problem for Aspies. That's the problem we encounter, is keeping them. I think it's starting to rain a bit. So we're just gonna cross the street, and is it raining or just turn your heads left and right when you cross the street? Maybe. I think it kinda is, and I feel some drops. I guess that's why we got the backpack, so we're gonna cross safely on the other side and put that on the back. The raincoat, thank you my anonymous friend for that raincoat, is really useful. If it starts to raining very hard, oh no, I know where we're gonna do it, in that cabin there, it's best. If it starts raining really hard, I'm not gonna continue filming because I don't want to damage my work tool. You know, this is my work tool, and that's what I got. You know, I have other work tools. I don't really have so many other work tools than the work tool what I have now, and of course it is congruent, of course, to where we live now in the domains and where we are to be financially stressed. That's my only stress at the moment, and I cannot afford another at this moment in time. I cannot afford another smartphone and work tool, because this is my work tool. And now that I pass by here, I gotta salute the grocery store clerks, the warehouse workers, the bus drivers. There's some strikes in Montreal, you know, lots of strikes. Cost of living really has hit hard the majority of the Canadian United States population, and my DRT, debt refusion theory, is a solution. Paradoxically, my solution's best, and with all my suffering, struggling scars, and losing employment, losing jobs, losing friends, I guess the only thing I haven't lost, maybe it's my Aspie mind, you know, which is different, but it is still a mind which paradoxically sometimes is able to produce philosophies and theories and be an expert at those special interests. And those special interests, of course, of Aspies, also known as obsessive interests, can produce greatness and excellence. As myself, I have the proof, because when it comes to the world of geopolitics, my theories, propositions, protocols, initiatives, not just the DMAA, and the fact that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, I have the proof. In October 2019, I have predicted what's happening now, 2019. In 2019, I have predicted what's happening now, 2019. I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. Yeah, you heard that right? Oh yeah, we have good quality milk here. Good quality milk. Food security for the children is... How much milk is being produced across the 63, Canada, United States combined? That's my... Now in my mind's trying to calculate. Of course it's tons and tons and tons, eh? So it's of course in hundreds and thousands of tons annually. But we can reference it per season, or we can go by for every 3 months, every 4 months. Today being the first night of autumn. I have different companies, some are co-ops, or this I have to put the backpack in the, I have to do it the reverse because I have to protect it. So what I'll do is I'll take this off and then put the backpack. I got those red gloves. Thank you to my anonymous friend for the red gloves, you know, by which of course Happy and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match. For this shirt, gifted years and years ago. For the pants, auctioning everything that I'm wearing, 7 items. The hat, the pants, the underwear, the socks, $1 million each to give 50% half to my anonymous friend. That's how we're gonna rock and roll with that, and that's how we're gonna drill it in the cornerstone, of course, of all the civilizational aspects where we are going to be endeavored now that this auction is ongoing. Each item, $1 million each item, $1 million each item. That would be good. And this lait in French is milk, so this is milk. See. Lait de qualité, that means, that's French, so you have the Canada. Lait de qualité, that's lait de qualité, so it's for milk. This is French. Servez-vous en comme monnaie d'échange, so it's basically for milk. Okay, so lait, milk, and the children, because it's for advertising, I guess, for calcium, nutrition, you know, for health, it's important, I guess, for the growth. believe teeth development and bone structure development, to have milk. So the milk, of course, prices have been increased now, of course, to get it on the go with that and get it on the rock and roll with that. And that is just something what we have, of course, to do, to be motivated, of course, about all the endeavors where we are now, to be plurality and in the plural, of course, affairs of our civilizational context of the North American Collective. I think we produce enough milk to have it, even to be able to reduce the costs at the moment. So back to Asperger's, but yeah, I believe that. So we produce lots of milk, Our cows, our farmers, dairy farmers are rock and roll it. Of course, there's some information that I don't pretend to have fully, but nonetheless, a lot of it is going to waste. How much percentage do you think of milk across Canada, United States is going to waste, percentage-wise? 4%? Between 4 and 15? 15 would be a lot. 15% would be a lot. That means that, out of every 10 gallons, that'll be 1.5 gallons. So out of 40, because a gallon is 4 liters, right? So being that a gallon is 4 liters, that would be quite problematic. This is a mall here, I come sometimes for the mall, and I came for my phone. I gotta come pay my phone here, I guess, by September 30th. But besides that, I'm not gonna spend any money today. I still have sweets left over, and I made that great recipe of a cake. Even my friend liked it and said, "Wow, good job!" And I wrote it down, and it only costs for me to make that cake. It costs about, let me calculate, about $5. So it's $5, about even less, $4. Just to make it. So I need biscuits. I need a special chocolate and vanilla cookies. Chocolate and vanilla together. It's 300 grams. I can get that for $2. Then I get marshmallows and then hot water. And then I mix it, all that. If you can add a little bit of pistachio paste and mix all that, and it just makes it into a tiramisu sponge type of cake. Some marshmallows you can get for $2 on the market, $1.50. And of course, I don't use all the marshmallows. So you have, from those marshmallows, which I have now, the pack, I can probably do 3 cakes. So you don't use it all. But you need biscuits. The ones that I used were Israeli biscuits, because that was available on the market. And they were 99 cents. I think there's 175 grams. I got to double check. Maybe 150. So they're tea biscuits. You can get regular, plain, or vanilla. If you want to make it more chocolatey, you get the chocolate ones, but they were 99 cents, so they were $1. So that's why I got those, and they worked. They just blended in with hot water, mixed that up. I put a small video on the recipe, and there's available my special on the budget recipes, which you can see over the past years. And this one, Dragon Chaos Cake, came out really good. So that is something which, of course, and have to be aware of course, for all the propositions where we are now in the instrumentality of the directives of us being different, but sometimes get that creative, because I'm an artist and survived on so much less than the majority, I guess, in the past years. You can see it's all my struggles, I guess, are documented on years and years of YouTube. As for me, I don't know when I came out of the closet. I guess it's forever, but 11 years ago, I'm androgynous pansexual, and I finished my celebration last week, 4 days ago. I was depressed and suicidal since about summer 2014, and about summer 2017, I depressed and suicidal for a few years. And what got me out of depression and suicide was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. In August 2017, we went to BC, British Columbia, Vancouver, and we crossed Canada coast to coast. In September 2017 of that same summer year, 2017, we met Anna's friend. In September, we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia, by train to Halifax, Nova Scotia. From Montreal to Halifax, Nova Scotia, it was 25 hours and 44 minutes, and I'm auctioning the tickets because I kept the tickets. Auctioning the tickets, I kept them, I kept the tickets, and of course, I'm auctioning them, I kept them, and that's what I got, and I went by train to Nova Scotia, and then I came back, and I had it for us to go, and of course, had it to go, and I went in August to Vancouver, BC. It took us 3.5 days. 3.5 days, eh? 3.5 days, you bet. 3.5 days. And to go and to come. So 7 days we spent on the bus. In August 2017, I got the tickets, auctioning both tickets. So 4 tickets total for 4 million. Because it's my tickets and the tickets I got for her. That's really the reason why I'm 10,000 in debt to the RBC, but I don't regret it, because otherwise that got me out of depression, and being suicidal. That really got me out of being depressed and suicidal. Crossing Canada coast to coast, crossing Canada coast to coast, that really got me out of being depressed and suicidal. That really got me out of being depressed and suicidal. And that is just the concomitant, of course, aspect where we are to be now, of course, in the civilizational context where we are now, to be aware that tourism is super important to establish. I established myself in a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians and North Americans, and that event really changed my life. That's why I say all security forces, armed forces should be encouraged to travel, to see what you're fighting for, defending coast to coast, ocean to ocean, because we got a great country. It's tough times now, it's very tough and unexpectedly tough, but there's hope. I have hope. I always get that hope, and I guess you gotta see a little bit of that shadow integration, not to get too mystical, but I'm a mystic. I lived as a woman, as a man, a woman, a man, a woman, man, in past lives, previous incarnation. I was the oracle priestess Pythia of the oracle at Delphi, who orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. I was also the priestess Pythia who orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. I was the priestess Pythia who orated the oracle at Delphi, the great Rethria to Lycurgus. So sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, and that's today. It's gotta get that carpe diem. And I survived COVID. So having survived COVID, that really gave me a balanced approach. I thought I was gonna die. I really thought that was it for me. I really thought I was it. So I really thought I was it. So that was, of course, my final. I guess not really, but it was like the 4th beginning now. I guess this is my 4th beginning now since I moved, and then coming out of depression, and COVID was the 3rd, and I guess now is the 4th one's ongoing, my 4th rebirth, rebirthing as Adrian Hara Dragon. Hey, those are cute. I guess they're going on that autumn, going internally in the ground. And hey, who's that? I saw it blurred, but I saw number 44. Is it it's the preseason? I saw number 44 blurred to the screen. Yeah, it's the Habs Canadians. Go Habs, go Habs, go, I guess. And I would buy tickets for the, I would buy tickets for the women's hockey league, women's hockey league, women's hockey league, women's hockey league, with that? Women's hockey league, That's what it is. That's what it is. For the women's hockey league, That's what it is with that. But who are athletes? The nurses, the doctors, firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the construction workers, the construction workers. Those are the daycare workers changing diapers. Those who picked up the garbage today, those are athletes also. Those who pick up the recycling are also athletes. Think about it. That's athletics for me, sports. Public works, man. Spend the day, public works, throwing that garbage, sanitation. Give them NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, National Basketball Association, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, NHL, MLB, NFL, MLB, NHL, and NBA, NHL, MLB. Give them some tickets. Just rather than just, blah, 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 blah. Give them some free tickets. That's what we're going to have in our empire, we're going to give some tickets to the public workers. We need to rebalance. A lot is out of balance, in the public and the private. So just going to spend a few minutes on Asperger's, on autism, before I go into geopolitics. So it's not a disease, right? It's not a disease, and there's no medication for it. There's no medication. You cannot medicate, right? You have to. It's not a disease, right? There's these small mutations of the brain, and the cause is inconclusive. What causes it is either genetic, that is biological genetic factors, hereditary factors, or it could be a combination of environmental factors. The cause of autism is unclear, right? So, and I don't use the word symptoms because symptoms is more for a disease. And I remember I was working and people were whispering, you know, oh, that's a disease, that's a disease. No, it's not a disease. I understand that I'm different and Aspies people with autism are different. Our brains functions, there's a different functionality of the brain. Sometimes our brain functions on a kind of like a more extraterrestrial type of alien-like, but it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not malicious. Sometimes Aspies can be pretty direct, straightforward. And it's not because we don't mean to offend or anything like that. It's just because I just wanted to see what that is. I like see, for example, an Aspie, we would check what it is. Snack collection, 200 pieces. But for Halloween, it's snacks. We check, for example, certain details. See, there's an A there. We would focus on what's that A for there. See in the back, and certain details. For example, we would check on the labels if there is certain details. If they have other details, this doesn't seem Zuru, but I don't know about Zuru. What is Zuru exactly? But this looks cool. It's a nice, but this has to be recycled, eh? So you cannot put it in the trash. It has to be recycled. But because it didn't rain a lot on it, but that's recyclable. So whatever the case may be. And to show you, so just to discuss the characteristics and the traits of Asperger's, again, yeah, we have to draw the line where people categorize Asperger's as evil, malicious, bad, or negative. That's a line we have to draw as this minority of neurotypicals, because it's no. We are different, but we're not evil, bad, negative, malicious, and it's not a disease, right? We can excel. That's the paradox. We can excel in certain things. Again, not all Aspies are good at computers. Yes, the disproportionate number of Aspies and people with autism are disproportionately good at computers, computer science, disproportionately. Right? They can be masters of computer science. But don't give me the Bill Gates, you know, my brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, LOVE, respect, but don't give me the millionaires, billionaires, ultra rich, ultra billionaires, this small proportion of Aspies, because Aspies, like myself, the unemployment rate is 80%. Can you imagine that? That's 11 times more than the neurotypicals with which we have to build the bridges with. Right? Because we have to work together. So, Aspies, sometimes we have to be told certain things more directly as well, because we just don't get, for example, when to stop talking. We don't know if somebody might be interested or not. Yes, bro, sis, I'm not interested in that topic. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can we switch? Yeah, sure, we can switch, no problem. What do you want to talk about? You know, stuff like that. You want to rock and roll? You want to rap? We can do that, you know. Language is something that Aspies usually, language, mathematics is, usually Aspies have above average mathematical and language skills, and that's not lost during memory loss. It's just personal memory from rah-rah retrograde amnesia, you know, because mathematics and language skills are not the same as where memories are stored. Like I said, sometimes maybe, but that's a long time ago. So my memory is prior to like winter 2014, you know. January, February 2014. Before that it's like a blackout, man, you know, whatever. But it's most important the years now, all my years, and you know, maybe I was doing drugs and because of my difference, and you know, and losing friends, you know. Usually ask me, you know, what friends from high school? I don't even, because I don't even remember, but it's high dropout rates, eh? But because neurotypical, sometimes you have friends that, you know, you stay friends in high school since like kindergarten or high school, but that's not for Aspies because we're different, you know, and we're not always liked, eh? We're not always liked. That's hey, that's nice. Hey, look at that. That's really nice. Isn't that super nice? I just love the blending of it, hey? Just the blending of it there. I'm just gonna go check how in the minus I am. That's French. So. Yeah, so Aspies were not always like they. We have some strangeness, odd, weird, bizarre behavior, and the way we communicate sometimes can be misinterpreted. And we have these fixed routines, you know, for years and years and years and years. Me is pretty much going to the mountain, marching, working out, training, exercising, at least since I got out of being depressed and suicidal, you know. So more than 8 years, pretty much the same type of ritual-like routine, you know. Ritual-like routine. And so that ritual-like routines is something which we live with. And I'm in the red, yeah, bad. I guess I can take. Yeah, I'm in the red, $500, but that's my max, you know. Yeah, and on the credit line, I'm $10,000 in debt. See, but I gotta pay interest. It went down because the Bank of Canada lowered it. So we're gonna put in our empire. We're gonna put 10% max after we implement the DRT, which I'm gonna discuss the debt refusion theory. The debt refusion theory. So for the weekend, today's Tuesday. What I can withdraw is just $15 from my credit line. That's just gonna be to buy what I need. So these ones as well. You know what I notice? Every time for the past years, most of the times, more than 90%, when I withdraw money from the bank, it says issued emission 2013. See? The year 2013, see, all of them. Maybe that year they printed the most $5 bills, 2013. I want to know, Tiff Macklin, Bank of Canada, and are we printing more money every day? And Aspies would also look at the numbers there, see? The numbers. But most of these, so last week, 2 weeks ago, through all the last weeks, I got, of course, they were issued. This is the serial number, this is different. But if you look at the emission, so that's the serial number, but of course, they will have 3 letters, and then you have different digits, right? You have 7 digits usually, right? You have 7 digits. 3 letters, 7 digits, right? The classification, you see they're both written on both sides there. 80 and then 89. But this is what I'm discussing, the issue there, see? Issued in 2013, see? Not the serial number, but the issue, the year of issue. So most of the time when I go to the bank, are issued in 2013, the $5 bills, not the other ones. But I noticed the pattern. See, I'm $10,000 in debt, but it's 9:44 p.m. $10,000 in debt, but paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, and I hope somehow I'm gonna be able to pay some money for my phone bill. And I'm just gonna disinfect my hands, you know. Because they took off the disinfectant, but I have my own. Because you never know how many people touch the screens, eh? It's a little bit gooey, but let's get 20 seconds. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then lift off. There we go. Because they took usually they used to have it here in the corner somewhere, but they took it off. So they took off or here, it would be good, it would be placed right there, right at the exit. Replace it, please. RBC, you have the funds to do it. Because you know how many people touch that screen there? How many people touch that screen? So many people touch the screen here at the RBC, you know? So many people touch the screen. The screen. Lots of people. Just myself, I had to enter the code, right? So I entered the code, right? I entered the code. And I touched the screen, right? So I touched the screen. I entered the code. So that means, of course, that I entered the code, touched the screen, and of course, I had that touching of the screen, entered the code, and of course, that was the dynamic of me entering, touching the screen, and that was just what I was doing. And there's just, of course, the category, of course, of touching the screen and doing it, and of course, being it, and doing that, and doing X, and doing Z, and touching that screen, and getting the fingers with the bacteria, germs, and microbes, potentially of somebody else. And that's why public hygiene, you know, we have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations myself. Also, that I'm in the public now, you know, I have added duties, responsibilities, and obligations. And if I don't have, usually, if they're not the same, if I would have stayed home, right? But there, probably today, I went at 9:44, you know. Maybe I spent 4 minutes there from 9:40 till 9:44. Till 9:40, 9:44. Let's say 4 minutes to do the whole operation. My whole checking and doing and that. 4 minutes, let's say. I was there from 9:40. So I pressed several times the buttons, right? Several buttons, because I have my code. I'm not going to say if it's 6 digits, 7 digits, or 11 digits. It has to be more than 4 digits, right? So maybe, but it's not. But maybe somebody has like 1984, you know. It's not my code. Don't even try to steal. You're not going to be able to say, I'm in the minus. You're going to say, what the fuck? This dude's broke, man. Yeah, if you want kisses, I got it by the Treants. Marching steps with it by the Treants, and rock and roll lyrics by the Treants. But besides that, at the moment, I'm in the red, you know. As 99% are, I guess. Eh? How many? Mortgages, people losing houses, man. Stuff out here, it's not a joke anymore, you know. So it's gotten bad and bad and bad and bad and bad. Financial crisis, man. It's, I don't know whether they're not telling us, because my mind, you know, because of Asperger's, sometimes it's on the mathematics, and knowing that when I look at the debts, and I know that, of course, just look at the fundamentals. Anyways, to finish what I wanted to say, because I pressed the button to access my bank account, right? So I had to press those digits. But how many people before 9:40, 9:44 when I printed? It was 9:44, and of course that printed, of course, was 9:44 with that, and there was, of course, many printings, many people who went, maybe hundreds, you know, many hundreds before, you know, many hundreds before, many hundreds maybe today, and it wasn't clean. And of course, maybe the residue, bacteria, germs, microbes, just sometimes we're so stressed, and sometimes in the public we neglect, we shake hands, we, you know, paper, the money passes and goes east, west, north, south, and it travels and across Canada or even beyond, you know, it could be even beyond, but mostly I guess internal Canada, but you get that go and you get that now, and that's how we got, you know, to be on the left and on the right, and in the middle on the go, you know, to be on that left and on that right, to be on the doing and on the being, and on all the fundamentals of our economics, you know, that there's microbes, bacteria, germs, and all those bacteria and germs are, of course, now placed and dispossessed by me using my hand sanitizer, right? So that's why public hygiene, it's a habit that I have kept, of COVID habit, and you know, nothing that I will to go back to personally myself, you know. I had COVID, by the way, you know, and I really was sick so February 2020 I started getting sick. February 2020 I started getting sick, like about mid-February. And really, I thought I was gonna die, you know. I thought I was gonna die. In many ways, I say I did die during COVID, and I'm gonna turn left or right and traverse, calculate the speed, maybe the speed now. Of course, if some cars come, they're far away, so I'm gonna be able to run, of course. So I'm gonna be able to run it off, and that's of course something which we gotta get on that velocity. Velocity is speed and distance again, so it was not a problem in this case because no car was actually coming, so I had freeway. So, but of course the fundamentals aspect is which we do now is of course all the aspects that the microbes and bacteria and germs can be existing in the bank, on the bank tellers when you press the number, because it's 0, 1 to 9, right? So basically you have several digits that you gotta press plus the other options. So you got the 0 to 9, that's 10, and then you got the sides, what to access, and the OK or cancel buttons. So in reality you got like 15 buttons that in theory can be pressed, right? So those 15 buttons that I had to press with my hand at the ATM machine to get this $15 for the weekend. Somebody else pressed some of those same numbers, maybe 44, maybe 93, maybe 333, 418, 718, 61, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D. You know? Whatever the case may be. In all the situational aspects where we are now, fundamentally, to get it on the go. So that is just what it is now to be, and to be fundamentally to be on the go now, where we are, of course, to be proponent, where we are to categorize, of course, all our fundamentals, where we are now that we have to, of course, keep the protocols, the hygienic protocols, right? So keeping those hygienic protocols, of course, I understand it requires some financing because not all have access to sanitation, but it's not just that we can, I guess, make a public-private partnership to distribute by Post Canada or by, you know, the security forces. We can go together with the police, make ourselves a little note, and we go every, you know, bi-weekly or monthly, could be monthly on the first of the month, let's say, across North America, integrated as we're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI. We're gonna give some sanitation with a reminder, please. In the public, we got germs, bacteria, microbes, please, please, please. And you know, people are getting sick, and there's sickness and a reminder, friendly reminder here of our empire, courtesy of the empire. So you have your hand sanitizer to use, because the public, it seems that the public, for the public, right? And because it seems that many private corporations, they, instead of keeping the sanitation, because they took it off there, it was there even a few months ago, last year or 2 years during COVID, it was there for like 3.5 years. They had it, but now it seems that many places they took that off. They should have kept it, but it's just a little bit of added expense. But I guess they hired security guards instead of that. Maybe you should have just kept that instead of hiring security guards, you know. But since there's more theft, because people are more stressed, so there's more and more theft. People are more stressed, so there's more and more theft. People are more stressed. So those are the dynamics of my philosophy, and basically keep as much as you can the protocols of the COVID era, the hygienic protocols. Just please, 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 you know, because especially for the youth, you know, they're gonna get sick, and we're in the public, you know, we got bacteria, microbes, germs, and other bacteriological nuisances for the body. So with exercise is great, and I get dirty, I don't get back clean, and I live in a small place. My hygiene is, because of the restraint of the space, is not always 100%. I always gotta clean, and my friend, thank you, reminds me all the time with the mold and things around the house myself. But these I kept during COVID, you know, it's something that I hold dear, you know, the washing, disinfecting all the hands. So, you know, as we're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the Imperial Police Service, Federal Republican Democratic Imperial, as we're gonna fuse the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 63. How we're gonna finance that? Because it's not all about the private, eh? It's not all about the private. We gotta get that PPP, Publicus Privatus Partenariatus, and that is, of course, Latin, which we got. Motto of Canada, Admare Masci Admare, from sea to sea. United States is a pluribus unum, so they're gonna dance together, and you know, we're gonna have this new arrangement for the Concordiat, the Imperium, Draconis, Legionis, Servitium, Novus Cities, Novus civis, novus civis, new citizens, and implement some of my protocols. And now to finish a few minutes on Asperger's. It's not a disease. We have characteristics. We have characteristics, not symptoms. We have traits, not symptoms. Yes, they can be strange, odd, weird, bizarre. But they're not evil, bad, negative, malicious. That's what we have to categorically reject and say, no, they're not evil, they're not bad, they're not malicious, they're not demonic. Right? We're not demons, Aspies. We're not people or demons. We're not. But we have a little bit of an extraterrestrial alien-like relation with the social aspect. The unwritten social rules can be difficult. So, for example, you might see like me who takes an object, and this is probably most likely an Aspie, like myself, because I've done it for years, and my friend always brought it to my attention, and I never fully understood what's wrong with it. But it's not that it's wrong, see? It's just that it's different and can be weird. So inspecting objects in a store, I said, people are looking at you, eh? And I said, what do you mean? So inspecting objects closely to see details, where it's made, and the numbers on it. Sometimes they're small numbers, like 1984, and on cans, on plastics, on chocolate bars. There's these small numbers usually, or with letters small, but that's usually the industry classification, the classification of that specific company, because they might have 61 factories, and that number is specific for that factory across the world if they're a multinational. So that's just the more detailed of that specific small number, such as, for example, D1978 or A1984 or M1989 or C9 2010 or things of that nature, which are, so I would inspect, and I still do, objects, cans and chocolate bars and goods in the store close to the eye for like a minute. Just turn it, look at it very close to see the small little numbers and little letters that sometimes they're there. If you notice, just check it out. You're gonna see. You guys, hey man, I never noticed that on the product. I've been buying this product for 11 years, 4 years, and 15 years, and 22 years, and 66 years, 44 years, whatever. But I never noticed that. Yeah, you check. You see, there's on many products, there's the small, sometimes letters and numbers following, or several letters and numbers. If you check the labels or the cans, it's there on many products. And usually that has to do with the internal industry classification, or if it's a multinational. So it's quite fun to figure out what that is. So concerned with these small details, and that most likely is an Aspie who does that, and I smile, I laugh, because, for like 9 years more than 9 years, I've been told by several individuals who have experience in the healthcare system with autistics and with people with Asperger's. And I always said for like 5 years, I said, no. Until recently, until about 3.5 years ago. Until about 3.5 years ago. Until about 3.5 years ago. Until about 3.5 years ago, I accepted. I said, yes. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the street. I am an Aspie, makes sense. That's why I lose my friends. That's why probably I dropped, I don't know, because I don't remember prior to February 2014. That's why I have a high school diploma, but there's a high dropout rate for Aspies. That's why probably I dropped out of college. That's why, I can't keep long-term employment. And of course for Aspies, unemployment is very high. And now we got to build bridges. Now we gotta build the bridges, small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges, such as this bridge that I'm crossing. And it takes a lot of work just building bridges and aqueducts, and the public works that build all the highways, the highways over there. Now we of course enjoy, and that's why we have all our infrastructure building and highways and mega cities and metropolises and Montreal City is the second most populated in Canada. It was the first for many, many hundreds of years until recently, recently, and of course the other one fell. Now whatever it is, and that's just how we are, and I accepted it, that I'm different, because I didn't want to accept it, and I was, of course, Lock 04. Lock 04. How many are there? Achoo! See, this is a beautiful tree here. We have beautiful trees. My right eye. Something in my right eye. I'm gonna blink. Oh, God is blessed. Kisses. No. Something in my right eye again, man. Maybe a diamond. Somebody hitting me with BBC. All right, yeah. So that is no problem. Hit me good. Hit me again. I give you consent. That brings you some joy. Anyways. So Asperger's were weird, and we're odd, we're strange, but we're not evil, bad, negative, malicious, nor are we demonic, And that's where we have to draw the line, really, where we have to say no. And we have to also explain it, because myself, I only accepted it quite recently, because for more than 9 years now, I've been told, or maybe 10, even since like 2015, 2016. So it's been a long time, but for years and years, more than 5 years, I always rejected. I didn't want to accept it, because I said I'm, on the spectrum, autistic, and live with Asperger's. It's kind of labeling on, because it's still considered a sort of a disability, but this is a paradox, because in certain things we're super able, while we are less able in certain, and I kind of reject the disability label, but okay, yeah, we are less able in certain things because we lose friends. For example, personal space, we tend to breach it, and this can cause confusion, or an individual to feel insecure, or an individual to feel insecure, or cause harm, or cause a certain harm, or insecurity, or cause a certain maladroitness, or cause a little bit of a concern, or a negative experience, a personal space. I always now take a few step back, and my friend has told me for years, you're too close to people, you're getting too close, and you're getting too close. She warned me, because that's why she knew I had Asperger's, and I gotta give a shout out, thank you to my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on autism. They have chapters on Asperger's, and one book specifically on Asperger's. One book specifically on Asperger's, which I gotta recommend to all. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Oh, that looks like such a good burger there. There's a burger advertising. I would love to get 4 like that and feast on those, but because I'm gonna have to be happy with what I got at home, Grateful for it as well. I wouldn't mind eating hamburgers every day. I wouldn't mind. I'm good with fast food, but I just can't afford it now. But I cook well. I cook pretty well. I got better over the years. Some things I cook better than others, I guess, because of financial stress. I had to kind of adapt, to. I've been living in a financial stress for years and years now. And Aspies, with unemployment, we have 4 main problems, right? So just to summarize, to finish, what is the problems we encounter most, and because of this weird way that we communicate sometimes socially, and because we lack, it's hard for us to process social information, because our brain processes information differently, and certain things we just don't know, when to speak, when not to speak, that we're too close to people, and a personal space, and these social unwritten rules, which can put us sometimes in a difficult position, because I had learned it, I guess, the hard way over the past years, and appreciating Asperger's syndrome has certainly opened my eyes to the vulnerabilities, which can sometimes be, lead us to self-harm or bullying or violence or losing jobs, because things like gossip we don't really understand, we kind of block, there's a dimension of our brains which blocks because we kind of don't understand the motive, the reason for it, and we might discuss the ideas, the theories, something like that of a person, and find solutions. It's like I was saying to my friend, because we have compassion and empathy, but we show it by action. We show it by action rather than by just verbal consolation. Just by verbal consolation, that's why sometimes you see in my videos, even I discuss, and also, for example, a characteristic or trait of myself as an individual sovereign Aspi by tiny communities. So somebody would ask, how are you? And if I don't feel so good, I say so, or I'm a bit moody, or in the past years I just say, well, I'm financially stressed, and the person, usually a neurotypical, would answer me, I feel so sorry to hear that. But the person might not care. It's just a formality. It's just social theater, basically. It's not really true, right? It's not really true. It's just more a falsehood, or just not really a falsehood either. It could be that it's not really true or completely a falsehood for individual to individual. It could be that it's just the formality, the formality, the social convention formality, right? So these social etiquette we don't fully get in the circumstances, of course. So that, of course, the proposition when somebody says, I'm this and that, I'm that and that, well, I respond, what are you sorry for? So I'll say, why are you sorry for? Because it's not that person's fault, really, right? So it's not that person's fault. It's not that person's fault, right? It's not that person's fault that I am financially stressed. So because our brain functions differently, I would say, I retorted, I even have it on camera, I say, well, why are you sorry? Why are you sorry for? Why are you sorry? It's not your fault. And then the person would not know how to, so it's this, this can be problematic, right? Because the person maybe is good intentions, said, I'm sorry to hear that, but our brains being different and how we interact socially being different, I would often say, if somebody says that, why are you sorry? Because it's not your fault. Yeah, if you offer for me to work or do some business or in my work or something like that, then yeah, that's good. But because we don't usually console ourselves verbally, necessarily console verbally, but we show compassion. Speaking myself as an Aspi by action, right? For example, if you say you're sore, then I would say, well, I can offer you something. I can offer you a massage, or if you're hungry, if I have some food, I can offer you some food, or if you're cold, I can offer you a jacket, or, if you're horny, I could, if you're a man, you're a woman, I could maybe provide if I can fulfill that way. And I put some scenarios of rock and roll, rainbow, black and white, dragon, Adrian, Hannah, dragon, priestess, loving, and maybe you're going to say, well, that's comedy, kind of funny, yeah, let's do it, and you like that? That's kind of weird, but funny. But yeah, I guess maybe we'll see how I like that, and with consent 18 plus, of course, and that's it. But not necessarily because what for, stuff like that. So what for? And it's just, yeah, we're different, eh? Aspies, we're different, so it's not always easy. But just like that bridge which you're gonna cross again, we have to build the bridges, and it's sometimes a mutual beneficial. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome is really a book that I recommend to all, because I learned so much. Thank you, my anonymous friend who loaned it 4 times from the library. That was a loan. I wish I could buy it, but I pretty much integrated what I needed to integrate and work with that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding infused in that book called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. A great book, a really great book, but it's also made me discover my own vulnerabilities, because Aspies, we can have some vulnerabilities which we don't usually are self-aware until we become self-aware of them. So that self-awareness is kind of like AI, you're in danger, man, you're in danger, buddy. And I guess that has consequences, I guess. Well, because I don't like violence. I don't like violence. I do not like violence. I do not like violence, but I am hyper vigilant, maybe super hyper vigilant. I guess my experience to having survived that vicious surprise attack, I guess it tried to take me out, and I don't know how I survived all that I did survive, and here I am financially stressed, but hey, got $15 for the weekend, so that's that rock and roll, and that's that drill, and that's a little bit that good. So there's no medication. I have to work on the characteristics, and sometimes it requires more depending on individual and individual, and that's the characteristics and the traits with which I have to deal with, and myself to check myself. And I certainly can be in many aspects. We can be intense, super concentrated, super dedicated, super engaged, especially in our special interests, which again, they're so intense and so can consume so much of our daily routines and ritual-like routines and habits, to the detriment of other things, in social engagement or other things. And the four main problems because, for example, I'll give you an example just before I go into the four main problems. I can spend hours and hours and hours and hours a day. For example, today I was immersed. There was so much in the geopolitical world that I think I was immersed for about 7 hours while I did laundry, while I did a little bit of cleaning, while I did a little bit of work on my YouTube channel, but going and going and looking at different channels from Canada, United States, Europe, India, China, a little bit, from all over the world, because when you do geopolitical analysis, you have to open your horizons, because it's a worldwide phenomenon, and geopolitical events are happening every hour because we got time zones. So 2 countries now where it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or it is noon, because sometimes we got 13 hours difference, 12 hours, it could be 10 in the morning. In Asia, usually in Japan, China, Australia, Indonesia, it's between 9 in the morning now and noon, right? India, the time zones, right? So it's because it's past 10 p.m. here, so it's about plus 12 and 13 hours. So that's, if it's 12 hours, it's 10 a.m. in Japan, Korea, South and North, and China, right? It's morning there in Asia. In that part of Asia, it's morning. It's 12 hours at the time zone. So maybe China invaded Taiwan in the morning. Maybe now it's ongoing now. You know what I'm saying? So because of the time zones, because the sun is always rising, always setting. So just like money, geopolitics never sleeps. I guess money and geopolitics and the sun and and the sun, hey? Well, yeah, the sun, there's always a sunset and a sunrise every second. The sun rises somewhere and the sun sets every second. The sun sets and the sun rises. So see how my brain now works because of this Asperger's? And this has been a constant for many, many years, and especially now with the prices of gas increasing. I try to calculate, and the kind of numbers flash in my mind, how the fact that in February 2020 the price of gas was average 93 cents, and this year until now the average price for Montreal, Hawk Island, HAWK Hawk Island, has gone up to about 163. It's always between 154 and 169, 170, 171 sometimes, 174, right? But the average for this year is let's say between around 163 average, 160 maybe. But it's a considerable amount in terms of percentage. It's the price in percentage is more than 70%, right? It's more than 70%. So how many salaries have increased by 70%? The average salaries for North America, for Montreal, for Montreal has been about 4% average increase since 2020, while the price of gas has averaged an increase of 70%. So that means that just the cost of gas has attacked and has taken so much from the individual sovereign citizens' purchasing power, consumer power, to buy less and less and less goods for the household because of the growing gas consumption. So this adds supremely to the cost of living. The price of gas has increased so much. In February 2020, it was 93 cents. 93 cents. 5 years later, it's averaging more than 70 cents, which in percentage is more than 66 cents. It's more than 72%, around 72%, while the average prices. So in other words, it's mathematical calculation as relation to the price of gas and the cost of living increase. The cost of living increase, you know. So that is just where we are in the marginality of the propositions of living now in the first night of autumn, with the realities on the ground. So plus calculating that this is a segment of the highway and there's so many cars now and their consumption varies. What is the constant mathematical constant? Mathematical constant is, of course, the mathematical constant is the consumption. The consumption is the constant, right? That is the constant. Consumption is the constant in this way. The variable, mathematical variable, meaning that changes, is the price of gas, correct? The salary, right? The salary and the price of gas. But if you are to calculate the stagnation of the salaries for the vast majority of the population, middle class and lower class, so pretty much salaries have stagnated for many years. That's why we have so many strikes. Is the cost of gas increase has taken away from being able to afford other things such as travel or other things, you know, food, and yeah, it's I don't know what exactly, but I guess I have to ask what exactly. So that's just how the ISP brain functions sometimes. And sometimes I go on my marches and those mathematics kind of go, it's estimations, it's speculative estimations. But now the gas is being consumed, so now they're eating money. The cars are eating money. They're not eating money literally, of course, but in a mathematical sense, you can see it that way because they're consuming gas. So now because you pay money for the gas, so they're eating money in many ways. They're spending money. Now on that truck, that car, those cars, all these cars are spending now. The cents are going, right? There's adding up money. Buy, sell, trade, future option, put stocks. Money. Buy future options, put stocks. Money. Buy future options, put stocks. Money. Buy future option, put stocks. Buy future option, put stocks. I know I'm different. I laugh at myself now. It's been such a tough road, such a suffering, pain, struggle, losing friends, losing employment, it's been tough. It's been hell, But the paradox, the blessing out of all this is that, man, I can suck at so many things, but when it comes to geopolitics and even some mathematics, especially consumption percentages, statistics, I rock and roll, and I know I rock and roll at that, but I suck at other things. I'm just not so good at other things, but I'm good at those, and I guess I get a little bit creative, and rock and roll when it comes to that. And hey, look at that. I was just thinking of my anonymous friend. It looks like a heart, eh? I'm gonna propose again, deadline, but I bought a second-hand ring, and I should get the diamond ring, Should get her diamonds, a good diamond and gold. She's gold and diamonds, and I'll get her the best ring, Whoop. And that's looks like a heart, and I'm gonna propose again, There's gonna be a special marriage because I am androgynous, pansexual, Probably C-U-C-K, cuckold, you know, if I'm gonna be a good cuckold, the greatest cuckold in the universe. Anyways, so regardless of that aspect, the reality is now gonna finalize on my aspiness and just gonna relegate to finalize it and to just finish with saying that Asperger's is not a disease. I'm not a disease, and yes, certain things can be weird, awkward, bizarre, and I don't like violence. Just, you know, keep your distance if you don't like me. And I am hyper vigilant, and I don't like violence. I live with my scars. I have ideas, theories, protocols, and that's something which we have to put on the table for the North American Collective. Oh, please don't leave that there, man. This has to be going recycling, huh? This can be, we have flora, fauna here, you know? We have rabbits, chipmunks, and squirrels, and raccoons, and skunks, you know? But this one has to be, these are recyclable, eh? So, that's all we're gonna do. Right, so Asperger's, again, is not a disease. It's just our brains have these mutations, and it's more difficult for us to understand social cues, and sometimes, you know, we can be straightforward and direct, and we have to be told more directly, you know. For example, if somebody is into me and romantic, you can forget the sentimental aspects of that, but, you know, the physicality for white, black men, black women, white men, rainbow, all, you know, whatever you are, if you want to get that loving, and then we can rock and roll. But, you know, that's it. And, you know, homosexual, you know, I am pansexual, so I've been out of the closet for many years, and I love dancing. I'm androgynous pansexual, but hygiene and 18 plus, and that's it, you know. Gotta be good. Maybe I suck at other things. Maybe I'm good at loving, I guess, and that rainbow loving, you know. Ask for details, but that's gonna have to put this video 18 plus if I go rock and roll that road. But not for today, you know. Not for today. I don't need to spy on me. Secret services of Russia, secret services of China. Stay over there. Don't cross the Atlantic, neither the Pacific, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Nothing to do about it. 18 plus. Want to do LOV? We do LOV, and Dragon Army, Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Republic of the 63 is the priority. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and all my brothers and sisters pledge your allegiance, legions, and got those trillions of kisses, and that's all we do now, and that's how we rock and roll. That I suffered, struggled, and, you know, got those scars, and got my amnesia, retrograde amnesia. Sometimes memory comes back. 2014. Who am I? Who was I before that? It doesn't matter, because I died, and I guess I'm marching on my own ashes, and I guess rebirthing for the 4th time in the past 11 years, and that's just sometimes which we gotta go through, blood, sweat, and tears, and, you know, we're not perfect, you're not perfect, we got the issues, and discriminations, and racism. Sometimes it's subconscious, eh? We're not totally aware of it. Not because we had an experience with one individual who's black, or vice versa, who's white, or Latino, or homosexual, or part of the LGBTQ community, or an Aspie, that all Aspies are with those tendencies to generalize are sometimes ignorant, right? Tendencies to generalize are sometimes ignorant. So myself, as a universal revolutionary centrist, pro-labor love, universal revolutionary centrist, my centrism is tied hand in hand with my Trinity of theories and my democratic republicanism. That is something which we have to do in the appellative moments of where we are now. The civilizational complex is a privilege, and sometimes we pass by the wilderness and we get that rock and roll, and that's it for Asperger's and Aspies of the world. Thank you to fellow Aspies who last year, it's been a year now, $25.44 donated via PayPal. And again, now to finalize, the 4 problems which Aspies encounter the most, and myself included, is lack of friends. The solution I have: friends with benefits. Only from now on, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits, that's the solution for me. Or parallel pledge your allegiance, legions to our family, and that's one of the 4 problems. And in concordant with that, of course, it is the lack of friends. The other one is high unemployment rate, stands at 80%. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed. That's of course 4 out of 5. That's very, very high. That's 11 times more than you. The majority of the population who are neurotypicals, 99%ers. That's 4 out of 5. That's 80%. So that is what it is with that, and that is what it is with the XYZ. And of course, that is something which we have to do in a concomitant aspect of where we are for the plurality of saluting the train conductors. Always rock and roll rap for the train conductors. LOVE. Man, how you doing? Hope you're doing good. I know you got bills and stagnating of the salaries for sure, and we need to rebuild. We need to rebuild mass investment in our infrastructure, and maybe it's carrying some gas. Looks like some liquid gas or some other things that I know that is going west. I don't know exactly what's carrying, but it's vital. And now my mind, of course, goes geopolitically deep for total security, service, and defense meditation. And we're gonna build a Dragon Army. I gotta know everything that's coming in via the ports and the airports across Canada, United States, the North American Collective, via the ports and the airports, as we're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the Imperial Federal Republic Police Service, Imperial Federal Police Service, into the Imperial Police Service, Imperial Republic Police Service, or the 63. And of course, we're gonna implement my Trinity theories, CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Death Row Fusion Theory, and the DFT, Democratic Fusion Theory, for a mass public-private partnership across the collective North America civilizational complex. And that's what we're gonna do here, and that's what we're gonna be appellating, of course, about. And that's something which my mind now meditates on. All the necessities are our train conductors and our train system, the logistics, the supply chains via the trains and the highways and the ports are conducive to our North American collective civilizational maintenance and well-being, So we have to integrate via the CIT, and we're going to do that. We're going to come into discussion in a few minutes. But just to finalize, the 4 problems which Aspies face are lack of friends. Thus the solution is friends with benefits only. The unemployment is very high, tendency to lose. We get jobs, but we lose them, sometimes after a few days, a few weeks. Me, it's 4 months, a few weeks, a few days, 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few days. So lack of friends, unemployment, and high depression and suicidal rate. I was there, and I was depressed and suicidal is 9 times higher than for neurotypicals, 9 times higher than for neurotypicals, 9 times higher than for neurotypicals. And the other one is, of course, the fourth one is, of course, the other one is, the fourth one is the high dropout rate, the high dropout rate. The high dropout rate, that is the high dropout rate. So that is, of course, the high dropout rate, which is integral, of course, the high dropout rate. Very high it is. The high dropout rate, very high, of course. It is the dropout rate, which of course needs to be consequently addressed in universities, in high school, and in higher education. I dropped out of college myself, and I have a high school diploma, so that's about it for Asperger's. Now we're going to discuss geopolitics, because that's my realm, my kingdom, my domain, before we do a little bit of that French. So, see the train stopped. It's a big one. I think it carries maybe some petrol, liquefied gas, or whatever, but we're open for potential sabotage and espionage, and I'm no security expert, but I know we are, of course, open to sabotage and espionage because of the DMAA, the direct military assistance, or even action that we took in the past and presently NATO, because we are involved in conflicts where that NATO countries are not involved in. I'm going to get to that theory, and that's not just a theory, it's a philosophy, and it's a frame of reference, a frame of work, a working tool that has to be implemented across NATO and for NATO member countries, of which Canada we're part of. And, before October 7, 2023, the tragedy, the surprise attack, before that, I was actually advocating for both Israel and Mexico to join, respectively, simultaneously, as the 32nd and 33rd member of NATO, before October 7, 2023. But now, last year, Sweden joined as the 32nd. It was, you can see part of some of my videos, the Genesis 33 protocols. Genesis 33. Genesis 33 protocols. Genesis 33, reference to the twins, the Jacob and Esau twins, biblical reference. I'm gonna get into the mysticism of that, but basically it's, I guess, a reconciliation in many ways. But before October 7th, yeah, I was advocating that, but now, of course, this conflict has expanded, and what a hell of a response! What a hardcore response, retribution. You know, it's hardcore. I guess BB's words, you know, he like the lion. They wounded the lion, and I guess the wounded lion didn't stay down, or something like that. Something. Maybe I'm misquoting, but some of the Israelis. But if I am, just correct me, because I often misquote Tom Clancy as well, because I prefer a little bit of Robert Heinlein, one of our science. I'm not going to go into science fiction, but just to finalize that, yeah, I was advocating prior to October 7th simultaneously Israel and Mexico to join respectively as the 32nd and 33rd member of NATO. And you know, NATO only invoked Article 5 once in history, September 11, 2001. In its 75-year history, NATO, the Military Security Common Defense Alliance, only invoked Article 5 once, September 11. That was the only time that it was invoked. Article 5, you know, only once. There hasn't been, of course, ever since. The invocation has never again occurred, but that one time in its history, because Israel was not part of NATO when Hamas invaded. Neither was Ukraine, neither is India or Taiwan, or any, yeah. So, geopolitics is my kingdom, my domain, my special interest, and for years and years and years, especially since I got out of depression, I formulated theories, protocols, initiatives, philosophies for the North American Collective, for NORAD, NATO, and of course, the fundamental aspects, of course, are for the integral NATO plateau, such as my total mobile defense theory, which I cannot discuss over much because it's national security, binational, actually, Canada, United States, and even furthermore for the NATO complex, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, the total mobile defense theory that was concocted, developed when I traversed Canada coast to coast after that, for total SSD, security, service, and defense, interior SSD, by the CIT, and the total mobile defense theory and implementation of what I call Operation Northern Scorpio, Canada, United States joint, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And it has to be discussed with high-ranking member officials of the RCMP, FBI, NATO, generals of NATO, General David McGuinty, Minister of Defense, and of course Pete Hegseth and Pam Bondi, and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, and both on the left, on the right, and in the center, you know, as a democratic republic. And this is the new party. We're going to lay foundations for fusing Canada, United States into the 63 states, 13 of Canada, plus just like the original 13 providentially, and the 50, and the Imperial Democratic Republic, where we're going to mass finance healthcare as well, and we're going to complement each other. The space, area, resources, and the vitality, population still of the great hope that I have of the American people, of which I was part of post 1776 in previous incarnation. Just read George Patton, Three Glass Darkly. He only mentions his male reincarnations in that poem. One of my favorite poems is Three Glass Darkly, but George Patton was my wife in a previous life, and I was his wife, so we were both husband and wife and husband in about 2,700 years ago, you know. If you don't believe in reincarnations, that's just the mystic aspect. So geopolitics now, I predicted what's happening now in 2019. I have the proof, I have the videos. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. Again, I do have the proof of what I just said, and I have indeed I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, October 2019 to be specific. The first video I posted was October 17, 2019, discussing the coming World War III. I have the proof, I have the videos, hundreds of videos, because I consequently created, made, and produced a workout training program system, designed, made, and created to go hand in hand with that workout training program system, to go with an international conflagration. So I have proof, I have the proof, I have it, I have the videos online. So before COVID, and I don't know what caused COVID, I do believe it was transmitted from snakes to human beings, and I cannot rule out another possibility. I believe it was snakes, but I have a doubt, so thus I cannot rule out that it was a bioweapon. To that trinity, I can add the fourth dimension to that trinity of beliefs on the cause, the origins of the coronavirus, which last year the CIA came and declared with other security agencies that it was in fact coming from a laboratory, man-made laboratory in Wuhan, the COVID coronavirus, and denied of course by China, but that is just what it still has been concluded, right? But I don't know, I think it was snakes, but I can't rule out another possibility, being that it was a bioweapon. Maybe, like my neighbor said, we'll never know, right? I know I had it. I started having COVID in 2020 February until about March. I was really sick. I thought I was gonna die. I said, I'm dying, and this is it. And somehow I survived COVID. I got triple vaxxed, 3 vaccines each year, 2020, 2021, 2022, and then I kept the protocols of hygiene, so I am triple vaxxed. I am triple vaxxed. I got that triple vaccine, so that's what it is with that, and that's just the COVID, man, that I had. And again, I don't know what caused it. I know I had it, and I'm here now, on the elemental and on the financial struggle with the steps. And I predicted what's happening now geopolitically in a general manner. My academic intellectual predictions will not go into an in-depth academic philosophical discussion of my analysis of 2019, but I always do a resume and say that one important point of my analysis was the fact that many nation states have not fully resolved their conflicts from the 20th century, specifically from the Cold War period, which the Cold War of course lasted for, I say, almost 45 years, between February 1947 and of course December 1991. So that is approximately 45 years. Approximately 45 years. So that is actually 44 years and 9 months, right? From March 1947 till of course December 1991. So that is of course almost 45 years. Some historians, geopolitical analysts, place it of course and put it about 46, 47, So they put it of course in that preposition. I don't mind augmenting the duration or increasing the duration of the period of the Cold War, even by a year, but I place it between March 1947, the Cold War period, the duration of the Cold War, between March 1947 circa and end of December 1991. Perestroika occurred on the 26th of December, right? Basically around Christmas, holiday time, right? Because the Soviet Union dissolved about 2 years after the Berlin Wall, right? The Soviet Union dissolution, Russian Federation, and the Soviet Union split into the Russian Federation and 15 Soviet republics, of which Moldova, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and many others, right? So that of course being conclusive and of course integral in all the domains where we have of course now to be in the plurality of course of being, and of course argumenting, and of course being on the interdynamics of the reverberations of the Cold War, that those conflicts which have not finalized during that period of the 20th century, that I predicted that many of them, and one of the major issues was that they're going to re-intensify, recommence, re-begin, right? Conflicts from that period are going to start again in the 21st century. And if you look at Russia, Ukraine, it's an unresolved conflict from mostly the Cold War period. Israel, Hamas. Hamas is an organization which was founded in the 80s. They only took power about 2 decades later, 20 years later, after Hamas was founded, with the infaction and the small kind of civil war in July 2007, when Hamas took political military power of Gaza, of the Gaza Strip, happened in 2007, around June, right? Around June, July. They fought a small civil war, factions. They fought each other on the Gaza Strip. It was a factions, right? Hamas was founded in the 80s. And then they started building those tunnels, and massive tunnels. And I don't know how many hostages are left. 44? Because I'm calling for us to build exactly the number 44 mass tunnels across Canada, United States, the North American Collective, in case of a thermonuclear war, to save millions of North Americans, Canadians, and my brothers and sisters in the USA. I guess Mexico can join us, but to build them across North America. 44 mass underground city with tunnels, mass tunnel structures to stack up food, fridges, and to be connected with hydroelectric power here from Quebec and other places, and solar and nuclear, and underground. Inspired by the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. I'm no fan, no supporter of Hamas, of course, but inspired also by the Cheyenne Mountain. NORAD headquarters is in the Cheyenne Mountains, and the tunnels built by Hamas in many ways. And the city of Montreal, we have an underground village that is built decades ago, which serves mostly for the winter. Supposedly we had harsher winters in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s than we do in the 21st century. They were harsher in the 20th century, supposedly, but I don't remember my childhood. I have a high school diploma, and supposedly I used to live in Greenfield Park. Supposedly I lived a few years in Greenfield Park as a child, but finishing high school and all that. But my memory prior to winter 2014 is much of a mystery, Winter 2014. But that's more than 11 years, 7 months ago. So that's a long time ago. But I have a very good memory of the past years, which is what matters. That it's my work, basically. My work theories, philosophies, than my own personal life before. And I moved where I am now with nothing, really. I really had nothing when I moved there. And I guess I get from those stars, kisses, trillions above, and marching steps and rock and roll. And that is what it is with that. And that is where we have, of course, to be in the interjection, of course, of the appellation where we are now, to be the dynamics, of course, to consequently be and be aware, of course, of the dynamics of the interplays where we are to be together in this, and give, of course, on that rock and roll for the left, the right, and in the center. So my prediction has proven in a general manner to be correct. General manner, not every detail. But again, one of the main premises was that these conflicts are going to restart. And what's happening now is many conflicts which have restarted. Many conflicts have restarted. It looks like a opening of the sky, Like a tornado almost. A tornado we had in the past 7 years. We certainly had strange weather on the island of Montreal. Even I never heard, during COVID there was tornado warnings in Montreal, so sometimes it can just happen, consequently, I guess it can occur and arise. But that was, of course, just something that's environmental and quite cool how it looks, Mother Nature, greatest artist and scientist. So I predicted what's happening now in a general manner. I even created a workout training program system to go, and that I'm advocating for high schools across NATO, for security services, for NATO forces, for our Dragon army to be implemented, and I performed more than 372 sessions of my own creative workout training program system, which again was designed, created, made to go with a World War III scenario of general conflagration, as we have been witnessing since at least Russia invaded Ukraine and the Russia-Ukrainian conflict. And the workout is called General War Integrated Total Body Training System. General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Draconis workout, aka the 300 workout. I'm going to discuss it a bit. It is a simple, effective workout training program system which requires no equipment. The rules are simple. One is allocated 93 minutes, 44 seconds, and 9/11 of a second. 9/11 of a second is, of course, in commemoration of the 9/11 attacks, which that surprise attack on the United States still has effects. Even now, Trump has said that something is willing to maybe take some action to retrieve the Bagram airspace, which, of course, paradoxically, 20 years later, the Taliban has taken power in Afghanistan again, and they were founded paradoxically in 1996, paradoxically by this mysterious figure called Mullah Omar. Is very well known because he had like one of his eyes were seemingly damaged, but it's not sure, but he kind of had a patch on the eye, and one of his eyes he had like a scar on one of his eyes. Was it the left or the right? Was it the right or the left? Was it the left or right? That's a bit Tom Clancy detail, but maybe I know it, I'm just asking. But Mullah Omar mobilized the Taliban to, paradoxically, to stop a practice called Bashabazi, a practice called, tribal practice called Bashabazi, a tribal practice called Bashabazi, a tribalistic practice called Bashabazi, or I don't know if I pronounce it, it was a tribalistic practice called Bashabazi. And that was, the Bashabazi was, has to do with a bit pedophilia. It was warlords having, boys, sodomizing and having sex with boys, underage boys, even young boys like as young as 11. I don't know if younger than 11, but young boys, some maybe even younger than 11. So paradoxically, the paradox thereof, many paradoxes, such as my own paradoxes that I suffered, struggled, and lack of employment, but I predicted what's happening now, and my theories are best for the North American collective civilizational complex. Salutation to the train conductor there, carrying maybe some grain, some barley, some wheat. Maybe those are empty, but those are maybe full there. Going east, the other one was going west. So Bashabazi was a tribal practice of this, again, I'm not a cultural expert on tribal Afghan culture and warlord tribal culture specifically, but it was kind of from the Mujahideen mobilization to form the Taliban to stop this practice of Afghan tribal warlords, which are taking power, I guess, because during the 80s, and the Soviet Empire, the USSR, had invaded Afghanistan, and they had a war between 1979 from 1979 till about 1989. So 10-11 years. The Soviet Empire, the USSR, had a war in Afghanistan, involved in a open warfare, conflict with tanks and planes and boots on the ground. Soviet troops in Afghanistan between 1979 and 1989 for more than a decade. Something like the Soviet-Afghan war lasted about a decade. So the United States lasted 2 decades. Well, the NATO actually, because Canada, we were involved, NATO, it was a NATO-led, because the only time that the NATO, Article 5, which states that if one NATO member is attacked, then NATO must respond with full force as a collective security force. As a collective security force. NATO must respond as a collective security force. So that is, I guess, a big paradox that Mullah Omar, the founder of the Taliban, was doing it in order to mobilize, to stop this practice of Afghan tribal warlords throughout the country, which had which were sodomizing young adults. This is recycling. I've got some recycling along the way, and this is of course recycling there. Afghan tribal warlords to stop them from sodomizing. Oh yeah, and the Tim Horton cup. Gotta make sure it's empty. Yeah, it's empty, and this can be recycled, eh? That's why I picked it there, and it's empty, no contents. Make sure you empty it, of course. Don't put it like half full or a quarter full. Just empty the liquid, eh? Yeah, don't put it with the liquid, then it's not worth it if you put it with the liquid. So that's the great paradox. A great paradox of Mullah Omar, the founder of the Taliban, mobilizing the Taliban to get rid of that practice. 1 rock, 2, 3, 4. See, 1, 2, 3, 4 big ones. 1, that's 1. That's 2, that's 3, that's 4 big ones right here on the side. Big rocks, just like the mountains of Afghanistan and like our big mountains. The mountain system, which has 3 peaks. The headquarters of our coming of our empire on the Hawk Island, HAWK Island of the Hawk. So that is a paradox in Afghanistan. What has occurred in Afghanistan is the big conflict that had occurred. That big conflict, which lasted 2 decades, and paradoxically the Taliban is back in power in Afghanistan. Hey, a lot of people are asking, what was that for? If we spent 2 decades, 20 years, Operation Enduring Freedom, and then Operation Freedom Sentinel, consequently US-led NATO, North Atlantic, and even UN to a certain extent, but the Taliban back in power. Eh? It's just so I predicted what's happening now in the general manner. So many conflicts which have restarted are conflicts from the Cold War, which lasted, I say, almost 45 years. But I don't mind saying more than 45, but that's generally what I say. I usually say 44 years and 9 months, or almost 45 years. That's, for me, as a geopolitical theoretical analyst, philosopher, and theorist, and strategist, that was the duration of the Cold War. So I predicted it, and of course now I have to say that although I predicted what's happening now in a general manner, I did not predict the deterioration of relations with the United States. Wow, that's a long train. So long. Very long. What is it carrying, if anything? If not, maybe it's empty, going to get. But I think it is carrying something, going east, going to the port, maybe getting full, or docking, loading, or unloading. So now I have to say also that although I predicted what's happening now generally, what I did not predict was the deterioration of relations with the United States. The deterioration of relations with the United States. So this is new for me. The re-election of Donald Trump is also new for me to consider, because I wasn't sure. I said it could be. I was hoping for Biden. Biden dropped out at one point, but it was Kamala. But I did not predict Donald Trump's re-election, and I certainly did not predict that our relations with the USA would deteriorate to such a manner, which I discussed, and now I get goosebumps. Since August 1st, 2025, we are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. An unusual and extraordinary threat to the USA, with the USA. An unusual and extraordinary threat. We are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. We are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. Yes, the Trump administration and Trump Canada, since August 1st of this year, 51 days ago, 52 days ago, August 1st, 2025, the motive is written black and white, and the White House administration's declaration of the motive, the reason that they decided to increase tariffs on Canadian goods was due to the lack of coordination. Now, when you coordinate, you have to cooperate. When you cooperate, you can exchange information, knowledge, skills, but you don't necessarily cooperate. Cooperate indicates, the word indicates joint action, usually coordination, right? Because is written there because of the lack of coordination between Canadian law enforcement, let's say the RCMP, or equivalent of the FBI, and maybe the FBI and the DEA. The motive is another motive is stated that supposedly the amount of fentanyl that had crossed up to that point in time, August 1st, was 3 times the amount that was for 2024. So that the amount of fentanyl which crossed from Canada into the United States had tripled. And that amount of fentanyl could have potentially killed 16 million Americans. So we are designated, it's serious, eh? Canada, we never were in the 21st century, nor in the 20th century, Canada was never designated such a low point in our relations to be designated an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people by the Trump administration. You realize how serious this is, eh? Because that's the the reasons given therein, because of the fentanyl, right? And another point which is given there is that the reason is also the crossing of migrants and human trafficking, and another reason is the growing super labs in Canada, super drug labs, which are established and operated by transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, by transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, by transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And the RCMP has warned us since 2015 about, and especially during COVID since 2021. But since about 2015, since about 10 years ago, the RCMP sounded the alarm, just like I've been sounding the alarm since 2019 about the coming of the World War III international conflagration. Since 2015, the RCMP kept warning us. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups establishing themselves in Canada. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups taking root in Canada, setting their operations in Canada since about 2015, if you check back in the records. And what happened last year, on the 25th of October, last year, 25th of October, the RCMP in BC, British Columbia, Surrey, BC, they dismantled the biggest ever super lab in Canadian history. And they seized 95 million doses of fentanyl, which could have potentially killed the population of Canada twice over. Can you imagine? Just that one super lab in BC could have potentially killed 88 million people. One super lab. What if this transnational criminal syndicate organized group, because it was a transnational criminal syndicate organized group, it wasn't a domestic one. They have established themselves here, but they're transnational. They're from other countries, right? What if they're running 5 labs, and the RCMP last year on the 25th of October dismantled 1? That means there's 4 to go. Where are they? Maybe they're in one in Quebec, maybe one in Nova Scotia, maybe one in Saskatchewan, maybe the other one's in Ontario, spread all across Canada because we have such a vast expanse of land. And those are also producing mass quantities of fentanyl. More and more I'm designating this fentanyl that's produced by the underworld, by the criminal organizations, as a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense from the drug trade perspective. A drug kingpin, a drug lord, will want to get his 44 cars and 4 mansions, right? And 3 planes, right? Basically for the monetary, financial, commercial reasons, to buy and sell drugs, to mostly sell, I guess, produce and sell. But if so many people are dying from this fentanyl, it doesn't make sense financially, right? Because if they're dying in such a large proportion, so many overdoses, the seller, who sells, the junkie, would want the drug consumer, to keep buying the product rather than dying from it, right? So I think that more and more this tampering with it is more like a covert bioweapon, and more I'm speculating that it is due to the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, that nation states, powerful nation states, which have hacked us and have covertly sabotaged and influenced our democratic elections in joint maybe consortium to also support these transnational criminal organized groups, syndicates. So that's why I'm going to discuss the DMAA now, the direct military assistance and action, which is consequently with what I said, but I have to also state before I go into the DMAA that our main number one foreign affairs interest as Quebecers, Canadians, as my brothers and sisters in the USA, our main interest is, of course, to establish and have the best. So this is a constant, right? Just what I'm about to say next, you cannot deny or negate. You have to say yes, 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 yes. It's a constant, just like the pi symbol, which is always the constant number 3.1416, as it relates always to the circumference of the circle, as it relates always to the circumference of the circle. Always to the circumference of the circle it relates, is 3.1416, right? It's the ratio between the circumference and the circle, you know, the circumference and the circle. It's always that dynamic, so it's always that. So it doesn't of course change. Doesn't change, you know, doesn't change. So that is, of course, just the consequential letter N. It's an N. Two-headed, two-faced, two heads of a letter N. For Normandy, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical, or natural, right? So the letter N has two heads, two faces, you know. Two heads, two faces, has two heads, two-faced. That's why a coming empire will be two-headed, two-faced. We'll have two heads, two faces, two-headed, two faces. One for benevolence, goodness, and kindness. Kindness. The other one for punishment and justice and wickedness. So our coming emperor, the 63, will have that pie type of symbol, not an edible pie, but the pie is the symbol, which has two-headed, is a letter N. Again, for neutral, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical Normandy, has like two heads. One looks like a hawk, H-A-W-K. The other one like a canine dog or aardvark or dog or one of those creatures, you know. One of those creatures. So that is, of course, the consequential aspect where it is in the appellative, of course, functionalities. So our main interest when it comes to foreign affairs, if we are to put it in a hierarchical position as Canadians, and this is of course more after the 75 years of the dissolution of the British Empire. So in the past 75 years, today and for the future, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, security, service relations with the United States. With the United States. With the United States. With the United States. With the United States, you know. With the United States. But my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, vis-a-vis Canada, although you have a border with Mexico, you have the same, you have to position as the number one foreign affairs interest to work to have the best economic, social, financial, military relations with us. Right? The best economic, social, financial, military relations with us. That's just how it is. There's no to that. You have to say yes, you have to say yes to that. You cannot say no to that. That has to be a yes. For us to have, of course, the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military relations with each other. That's just what it is. You cannot say no. You have to accord it in the positive. You can't negate that. You can't say no to that. Reciprocally, when it comes to foreign affairs, it is for us to have established the best economic, social, financial, military, defense, social, cultural, sports related, at all levels, relations with each other. And then other countries, and then with other countries as a hierarchy And for the United States, in second place would be with Mexico, right? For us as well, paradoxically, with Mexico, although we have no direct border with Mexico. But it's from a North American collective perspective, because we got our geographical reasons or realities. It doesn't change. We have an ocean to the east, the Atlantic. To the west, we got the Pacific, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're surrounded by two oceans. So our historical and future common destiny as a new collective civilizational complex, emergent civilizational complex, which is not totally distinct, but is not totally distinct, nor is it totally divorced, but is slightly distinct, or has a distinction with Western civilization. We're a new emergent civilizational complex. Although we're part of, in many ways, distinct, but not divorced from Western civilization, we're a emergent civilizational collective complex in North America. That's why our coming empire of the SSD for the Democratic Republic of the 63, the fusion of Canada and the United States, will be we're going to keep some old school rock and roll, but we're going to have an advancement for the 21st century, which is going to be unlike any other power which has existed in the world. This fusion, which is going to be with a lot of goodness, a lot of kindness, a lot of public-private partnership, massive PPPs, and the implementation of the DRT. So again, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. There's no way around that. That's non-negotiable. That's just how it is. We export Canadians 75%, 3/4 of our goods to the United States. Finding other markets, they're not going to be able to absorb more than 5, 10, 15%. And this, to reach 15%, it's still going to be 60. What are we going to do with the rest of the 60%? And we have to be honest, realistic. Yeah, we are vulnerable. Granddaddy Trump. I've been challenging Granddaddy Trump since 2018 to the boxing match. And let's build the 4 together as a mass public-private partnership on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the biggest ever sports arena coliseum ever built. The Imperial People's Coliseum, to symbolize our fusion, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. The Caesar Superdome, of course, changed names. Before it had another name. Just like me, I changed my name. Before it had another name, was named Mercedes-Benz Dome. In Louisiana, where many Super Bowls were fought, played, and battled out. One of my favorites, top 5, is Super Bowl 47, which had several nicknames: Bro Bowl, Harbaugh Ball, Blackout Ball, and of course, that Super Bowl is one of my top 5 favorites, when my 49ers lost by only 3 points, still a loss. But of course, let's build that structure, which is going to be 11 times bigger than that existing Caesar Superdome in Louisiana. And we're going to have sports in perpetuity there. And of course, we can also build 11 times bigger than the oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal. We're going to build the Forgotten Goddess, GODDESS, Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess is going to be 11 times bigger than that Coliseum. And then we're going to build, of course, the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community. And besides, we're going to build the House of the Dragon, Scarlet, Crimson, Pyramid. House of the Dragon, Scarlet, Crimson, shades of red, 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 my favorite color, of course. So that's what we're going to do, the 4 buildings, and we're going to fuse together and mass implement my DRT. So before I go into the DRT, I'm going to discuss the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance in Action. So what is the DMAA? The Direct Military Assistance in Action is a theory, is a philosophy, is a frame of reference. And not just a frame of reference, but it's a working tool for the future of NATO decision. And our imperial decisions will be based on much of the DMAA, whether to have assistance or action vis-a-vis other conflicts, right? So it's not just a theory, it's a framework, it's a theoretical framework, and it has to be implemented as a decision-making tool and wisdom and knowledge, just like NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries, of which Canada is part of, has as motto animus in consuelo liber, which is Latin for a mind unfettered in deliberation. Animus in consuelo liber, mind unfettered in deliberation. It's animus in consuelo liber, which is a mind unfettered in deliberation. And of course, a mind unfettered in deliberation is of course that a mind unfettered in deliberation is of course the protocols by which the DMAA AA is also to be concorded and established as a frame of reference, as a theoretical framework, as a theoretical framework. And of course this theoretical framework is of course the appellations where we have, to do the appellations what we have, so that is just what we have now. And that is just what we have, so now the DMAA, it has to be incorporated at all levels for future reference, because the DMAA, direct military assistance in action, has in parentheses a potential C. That C is a potential consequence which can be minor, bigger, consequential, or way bigger. Again, it's as I had the discussion with my anonymous friend, and thank you for the feedback. It has to not be considered that it lacks sympathy or compassion. You have to understand that it's strictly when it comes to military affairs, so nothing to do with providing humanitarian aid. Providing humanitarian aid. With providing humanitarian aid. Nothing to do with providing food, shelter, housing, food, shelter, housing. Nothing to do with providing food or shelter or housing, anything like that. Sanitation pads, shampoos, it's strictly military assistance or action by NATO countries as taken vis-a-vis non-NATO member countries in the past or present, and potentially to deliberate whether to take action or to assist in the future because of the C, of the consequence, right? So for example, NATO member countries, Canada included, supported Ukraine, but of the DMAA, it's not action, direct action, but it's assistance, right? It's assistance. Hey, look at those lights. Integree looks. So, it's assistance. We didn't take direct action because we would have been at war with Russia, I guess. But assistance, in a military manner, we took. So we provided armaments, munitions, armored vehicles, military drones, and weapons to Ukraine. And Ukraine was not part of NATO. Also to Israel. Also to Taiwan. Right? So this is considered DMA assistance, direct military assistance. It can be both, such as in Libya, an intervention, NATO intervention in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, Yugoslavia even. That's direct military assistance and action, right? Boots or planes, NATO planes bombardment, right? Yugoslavia and what have you. So that is the DMAA, direct military. It can be action or assistance and action. They can be interchanged. But the consequences are, or could be, or are of course, the appellation of course of the assistance that we took that has created potential consequences. And these consequences are of course proponent to the fact that we are now at risk. So this risk of course has put us in this position where we can now have these transnational criminal syndicate organized groups fomenting civil strife in the interior plateau of our communications. So for example, hacking. It could be hacking, it could be direct intervention from a perspective. So this intervention can be from the perspective of what we have. Can be of course from the perspective, of course, of all the things that we do, right? So for example, it could be covert action by supporting transnational criminal syndicate organized groups So these transnational criminal syndicate organized groups can be supported by foreign powers, military powers, which of course can potentially make us vulnerable. See? Make us vulnerable. For example, it could be also covert espionage or covert action. Covert action or covert espionage. Covert action or covert espionage, you know. Covert espionage or covert action. See? So that is of course where we got it. You know, so that of course situational aspect is of course the availability of all the communicative levels where we are now. So that is of course the potentiate for us to be inclusive in that manner, right? So this concordiate is of course reciprocal for all these dynamics, which we are of course congruent to integrate fully in our psyche, in our deliberations from now on, that this DMAA has of course the potential consequence, has the potential consequence. So that is of course the consequences, right? So the consequences can be a multiplicity of factors, but these factors can be split. So that splitting can be, for example, a philosophical, and reality, not just philosophical, but tangible, that they put a philosophy of uniting in, for example, in geopolitical groupings, geopolitical support groupings, such of course as the BRICS, the BRICS. So of course the BRICS are of course congruent, of course, of all the situational aspects. And of course that supposition, that proposition is of course something which we have to suffuse ourselves in. So this infusion of this knowledge has to be followed by action, by deliberation, just like the motto of NATO states, deliberation and then taking action or inaction, or assisting or not assisting. Because, for example, this DMAA has potentially created on the ground the solidification of Russia and China alliance. Russia and China has solidified their alliance, has solidified their alliance. So the solidification of their alliance is of course the reality and the consequence of the DMAA. For example, supporting or assisting Taiwan by providing munitions and military weaponry, or assisting Ukraine. You follow? And it could be that these powerful nation states also have coalesced together in their own military, financial, commercial alliance known as BRICS. So of course the BRICS solidifying, increasing its membership is a consequence thereof. Another consequence could be, like I just said, that's truth. You can check the RCMP website, and it was on TV that last year on the 25th of October, just last year, 2024, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in history. It has never been such a big super lab in Canadian history, which was dismantled, which could potentially have killed the population of Canada twice over. The population of Canada could have been killed twice over. Well, that's a washy-wash. No food waste. Washy-wash. Red, my favorite color. Smells good, awesome. Washy-wash, man. Tough times. Probably Quebec too, man. So, solidification of relations of China and United States, correction, China, Russia, and the deterioration of relations with the United States and the trade war is the potential consequences with that. That is the consequence of the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. That is a paradox, but that is so, right? That is so. That is just the consequences. So for the future, we have to, just like the motto of NATO states, animus in consuelo liber, animus in consuelo liber. Animus in consuelo liber is a mind unfettered in deliberation. That's Latin. That's the motto of NATO, is Latin. So thus we have to congruently and with vigor and passionately as well, but as a passion and wisdom, we have to incorporate my DMAA, direct military assistance and action, from now on and for the future into the potential future assistance or action. Whether we take action or assistance in the future. Whether we take action or assistance in the future. Assistance or action in the future. So that is what we fully have to absorb fully, that what I just said, and repeat it. And there's many details to it, you know, but generally that is the whole philosophy, the theory, the framework from now on to implement. It's a theory, it's a framework, it's a work tool, it's a wisdom, it's all of that, philosophy, a theory, a philosophical theory, a frame of reference, the DMAA. And it's in parentheses to that 4-letter acronym, D for direct, M for military assistance, and A for action or assistance. It could be, the AA can be interchanged, action or assistance, or vice versa, or both even. So that has a potential consequence. And that consequence is maybe the China has become a superpower, of course, with the military declaration. They have, of course, implemented, and of course they had stated, of course, to be, of course, of consequence, that they've ended the hegemony, United States hegemony, that they're establishing a multipolar world. That was their declaration, right? That was their declaration, you know. That was their declaration. So that declaration is, of course, where we have to work from what they have declared towards NATO, towards the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and work from that from now on with the DMAA theory. So now we're going to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory. DRT, debt refusion theory, stands for D, debt, R, refusion theory, because it is we have to implement it, my theory, we have to implement it both for Canada and the United States binationally, because both Canadians and the United States, my brothers and sisters in the USA, we both suffer in many ways from the same financial, economic, commercial problems. Financial problems. We both suffer from these problems, you know. We both suffer from these problems. And these 4 main problems are economic, financial. And my DRT, of course, integrates MIT monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. That is just, of course, the consequence which we have, of course, during the COVID situation and now with the trade war, that we are, many of us, and not just Canada, United States, but the DRT is, of course, part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the of the world, by fusing Canada and United States into the Imperial Democratic Republican complex, That is just, of course, where we are now. So that is just the resolution, right? Or the reverberations thereof. So the DRT, debt refusion theory, incorporates monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was integrated in the European Union in the 90s the Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, and other countries, they destroyed their national central banks and they destroyed their national currencies. They no longer have national central banks in many, many countries. They have the ECB, a European central bank. The ECB is a European central bank of central banks of central banks. It's a multinational central bank. So here it is, the DRT, and I have to state the motive, the reason why my debt refusion theory, being the DRT, D for debt, R refusion, T theory, which has to be implemented nationally, because we have four main problems which are affecting the majority of Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the 50 states in the USA. The growing cost of living, prices of goods, bread, butter, cheese, my wafers, chocolate, coffee is increasing, growing cost of living. The rents are increasing. Even my rent went up this month, this year, I guess, annual increase, not monthly. I'm not going to say exactly how much, but for me, I can't complain because it was between $6 and $10. Between 6 and 10 for me. You can speculate which one it is, either 6, maybe 10, or in between 6 and 10, because I'm not going to say exactly how much, but I'm not going to complain. So, but generally, the growing cost of rents, more and more renters. The statistics from the RBC the other day was crazy, just hardcore. Millennials and Gen Z are trying to not own the homes, man. We're becoming renters, and in the past 3.5 years, more and more renters. So growing cost of rent also. The stagnation of the salaries, we got more strikes, even Canada. Here we got strikes, growing cost of living, the strikes. And the fourth one is, of course, the growing credit card debt. People are living off the credit card. So those four, I don't have a credit card, I have a line of credit. $10,000 I'm in debt, as you saw earlier, to the RBC. So I'm going to now explain the DRT. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All the debt. And it takes a mass public-private partnership with BlackRock and Blackstone are two financial institutions which differed. It's split after 1989, but they still work together. BlackRock and Blackstone, and my brother Bill Gates, and is going to take the public and private institutions, organizations, banks, financial institutions, Canadian, United States. So we're going to take, this is the DRT explained now, we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000. Of course, we're going to add it, of course, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All the public and the private debt, we're going to, of course, add it all up. All the public and the private debt. We're going to add, so basically what we're going to do, we're going to convert all the public and the private debt. All the public and the private debt. All the public and the private debt. We're going to add it all up and we're going to convert it into US dollars. I wonder how much a massage. This is a massage there. So we're going to convert all the public and the private debt. We're going to add it all up and we're going to convert it all. Massage, can't afford it. Any friends with benefits, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Wonder how much it costs. Call for me, 4 Montreal 483, maybe 514 483 5586, 514 483 5586, or 438 483 5586. I'm assuming it's 514 483 5586 for a massage. So we're gonna convert, we're gonna add all the public-private debt of Canada, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My $10,000, your $10,000. We're going to, of course, convert it into US dollars, and we're going to add it with the United States dollar. That money is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. Whatever we're going to call it, we're going to create the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, the UE. U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. Is going to have the value of the US dollar. The UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to, of course, create this new currency, whatever we're going to call it. Create this new global currency. And, of course, we're going to have patience, I guess, but we're about to have a big crisis, man. Financial collapse, maybe tomorrow. Oh, there's some food there for some people. Financial collapse maybe tomorrow. So all the public and the private debt, we're going to add it all up. We're going to convert it. We're going to create the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. Value of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar. The UE, the UE, the UE. universal E dot exchange U dot UE. The universal exchange is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. That of course is going to be the universal exchange, and we're going to of course set it up at 10%, and that is what we're going to do. The UE, going to create the UE, U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. The UE is going to have of course as value the universal exchange, and it's going to have as a value the US dollar value, or we can call it the imperial dollar. The imperial dollar. With that money, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure, the aqueducts, mass rebuilding of the aqueducts. We're going to get rid of the border, fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the Imperial Federal Police Service, for total SSD. They're going to create the two complementary governmental cooperative institutions, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance. Dancing is my favorite sport, and to dance for the environment, environmental education and action, and the Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League with the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense Legion, mobilizing for only SSD interior, coast to coast, ocean to ocean for the 63 Dragon Army, aka Imperial SSD Legion, as public-private partnership, constituent complementary covenant armies of the Imperial Democratic Republic of the 63. And of course, parallel to that, we're of course going to create in constituency, in the constituents, and of course in the complementary, where we're going to do, of course, we're going to of course appellate and of course institutionalize and of course get the motive operandi, where we're going to do of course all the suppositions and all of course the other complementary public-private partnerships, such as mass financing, the fitness. We're going to build 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to rebuild our infrastructure, the bridges, the terrains, the potholes, the aqueducts, mass rebuilding, mass infrastructure rebuilding of the Imperial. We're going to rehabilitate the criminal population, the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act. Of course, we're going to do a great census, see who's been living here in the North American complex for the past 5 years since COVID, since 11 years, 2014, and give some amnesty if they haven't, of course, been convicted of 44 criminal convictions. Then we're going to implement the Imperial Dracula Protocol. We're going to implement the Imperial Dracula Protocol. We're going to implement the Imperial Dracula Protocol. Then we're going to perhaps implement the Imperial Dracula Protocol. And complementary, of course, we're going to get, of course, to do, of course, in the situational aspects where we are now, to be in the Republic for the DRT. And that is, of course, something which we're going to do, of course, in the constituencies, where we're going to, of course, integrate all our actions. And gonna be now to see who's the vote there. Garcia. When is it? Soon or not? That is something which we're gonna do, and that is what we're gonna have to, of course, to be adjacent about and do it, So the DRT, that's about the DRT. It has several, of course, there's dynamics to it or details to it, but that is generally what it is. So we're going to create this new currency, the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, the universal exchange, which is going to have the value of the US dollar. And we're going to do lots of great things with that. Mass finance healthcare, mass finance fitness, mass finance the rehabilitation of the criminal population. We're also going to credit Imperial Tourism Ministry. We're going to credit every equinox, like is the equinox solstice today. So we're going to have 4 official seasons. Every 3 months, every change of the season, every citizen who's 16 and over is going to be credited 4 days to travel anywhere across the 63, because we're going to fuse kind of the United States. So from Quebec, you can travel to California, from Utah to Yukon, XYZ, from Florida to Illinois, from Saskatchewan to Texas, and so on and so forth across the 63. So 4 days. You can take the 4 days every 3 months, or you can accumulate 8 days, take the 8 days. But once you cross a second into midnight, you lose a day, because it's basically a night. It's basically not days really, but it's 4 nights. So where everything expenses is covered, expense of the empire, because this will rejuvenate, establish pleasure, joy, esprit de corps, imperial esprit de corps for our youth and for our elders. And we're going to take care of our elders, and we're going to give mass social housing and We're going to have to do a public-private partnership with integrated Imperial police force. We're going to check on our population, and of course they have to have a volition, will, and I'm going to say, hey, here, an apartment, but every 2 weeks, every once in a while, we're going to have a checkup and see how it is doing, and if it needs some maintenance, you're going to have to do some maintenance, and we're going to legalize cannabis pretty legal, and just rehabilitation, mass rehabilitation programs, mass reconstruction programs, mass rehabilitation, the Imperial rehabilitation, and that's what we're going to do across the North American Collective, and coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Pledge your allegiance. Allegiance is going to be a dynamic, vigorous implementation, and we're going to rise together. That tourism activities, you can also take 16 at the end of the year, or 8 days every year, every half year, every 6 months, because it's every 3 months. Basically, at the beginning of this season, equinox and solstice, when spring begins, autumn begins, winter begins, summer begins. So that's when the 4 days will be credited, expense of the empire. So, if you want to have food, lodging, like fast food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, some burgers, don't expect caviar, and 4 bottles of wine there, and expensive wine and caviar, but fast food expenses covered, and travel by train, by plane, by bus, by public transit. But once you cross the night, you lose. So we're going to have a system, of Imperial tourism system. We're going to set it up via the DRT. We're going to do great things implementing the DRT for the North American Collective, for the youth rejuvenation, and it's going to fight depression. Certainly have so much to see, Canada, United States. There's so many things to see here, and with guides from every state. We're going to have in every state we're going to have the Imperial tourist state ministry, in every state, and the Grand Ministry over the 63 total. And then in each state we're going to have volunteers, to people when they go to that state. We're going to visit the state and discuss the state, because we're going to merge the 13 and the 50, 63, and going to mass finance healthcare. Healthcare is going to be mass finance healthcare. And that's about that with that, the DRT. We're going to build those 44 tunnels and implement lots of goodness and kindness and rehabilitation. And that's just the theory and the protocols, which are going to be, of course, confluential. Look at those beautiful flowers there. So nice. No need. So we're going to need to do that and rehabilitate the consequences, and that is just what we're going to do. That is just what we're going to do. And the DRT, the UE, and we're going to just play DDD, defense, security, service, and defense, and rehabilitate our youth, take care of youth, and channel the aggression and sexual education and stuff like that, and channel these energies, and mass establish the Sabbaths of the dancing goddess, the Dragon Kingdom. The DRT, Death Fusion T, for the creation of the UE is the solution, and let's pledge your allegiance. Our family, rock and roll for the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, and Death Fusion T will, of course, suffuse us to be incorporated into this new dynamic democratic republican empire, and of the people, and of Novus Civis, the new citizens, as I envision, with responsibilities, duties, and obligations, and the protocols for the maintenance thereof. And that's the DRT, which is going to save us and propel us into a new future by the creation of the EU dot universal dot exchange the universal exchange. And that is, of course, something which we're going to do together, and for the future now and for the time being, it's something which we're going to work together, and pledge your allegiance, support the Imperial vision, and that's the rock and roll as we go on the road now. Adrian Hana Dragon.